I love Mario. Mario has been one of the biggest franchises over all of gaming. Mario and video games go hand in hand. And honestly, my love of Mario can go all the way back to the original game Super Mario Bros. On the NES that released in 1985. Even if I wasn't alive when it came out. Yeah, that's right, I wasn't born then. The first way I played this game was on my Wii. I know, I'm cool. That's why I own too many copies of this game. The thing is, I've never completed this game. Well, properly, anyway. I've always used either save states or the rewind feature or something along those lines in order to fake myself completing this game. So I thought, why don't I actually play through every single level of the game and give this game a fair shot? Nintendo struck gold. Mario Bros was the newest arcade game by Nintendo, but there was a huge problem. It was stuck at the arcade. Of course, you could play this game on the Atari 2600, but I think the world would like to forget that it was ever on the Atari. What the Nintendo probably should have control over their Mario games. See, with the Atari port of Mario Bros, the game had almost nothing to do with Nintendo. Video games are really weird at this point in time. Luckily, Nintendo this year were also releasing their own home console, the very first one they'd ever made if you ignore the other consoles from before this. All they do is play Pong! Their new console was the Famicom. The Famicom was the brand new way to play video games at home. No other console had done anything like this. However, this was only released in Japan. Nintendo didn't really have a stake outside of Japan, with video games being in an almost dire state outside of the country. In the US, Atari killed the video game industry with release after release of some of the most horrible video games ever created, and people were getting sick of playing trash after trash. Legend goes that the peak of these horrendous games was a tie-in game for the movie E.T. This game was rushed, and nobody liked it at all. Copies were destroyed and buried just so no one would ever have to play this game, and video games seemed like a completely dead genre at home. Of course, the arcade was still a thriving business, but at home, consoles could never build up to the hype of what we had at the arcade. Back in Japan, Nintendo were trying to figure out a way to release their Famicom worldwide. But with this video game crash in the US, Nintendo knew they had to change something. So they waited 2 years and made it look like a VHS player. Alongside the release of this brand new Nintendo Entertainment System, they released Super Mario Bros., taking the characters from the popular Mario Bros. And created what can only be described as the best video game of all time. The best video game at the time. What do you think it has to compete with? Pong? World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Is the most iconic levels in all of gaming. It is a pretty simple goal, to introduce the player to the game as fast as possible. The level opens with a Goomba walking toward you, and a power-up being close by for you to get. Now despite this level's ease for more veteran players of any video game ever, this level in 1985 would have been a challenge to understand. There's no tutorial telling you the controls, assuming you didn't read the instruction manual. You're just straight into the game. Mario has that classic red and brown design, the sky is blue, everything is normal, everything is great. Wait, Mario's red and brown? Last time I checked, isn't his overalls blue? Well, there are a few reasons as to why this looks different. Firstly, this was still at the point where Mario's overalls and his shirt had the reverse colours, but even then, that doesn't explain the brown, does it? This was most likely done due to the sky being blue, with Mario at the time not having an outline around him, which would have made his overalls be pretty hard to see compared to the sky. You just gotta get used to this weirdo NES stuff when playing Super Mario Bros. 1-1 has a secret 1-up after all the pipes, pretty much the go-to secret for this level, with a pipe close by that will take you all the way to the end of the stage. Of course, this stage also has the famous hidden star, which is your first introduction to the power-up in the series. But the level ends with a simple hill up to the flagpole, for you to jump on it and finish the level. 1-2 is where things get interesting. Unlike 1-1, which is an overworld look, 1-2 transitions from the overworld into the underground. This theme is more blue than anything else, and is the underground of the Mushroom Kingdom. It introduces these platforms to jump on, different types of Koopa Troopers, piranha plants, and more, but we'll get to that later. Super Mario Bros. Released on several different consoles, with its first re-release being on the Super Nintendo, where the graphics are upgraded and the game is just worse. Look, I'm sorry, I just prefer the original Super Mario Bros. Over the Super Mario Bros. All-Star version of Super Mario Bros. Super Mario All-Stars also has some weird design choices throughout the game. In each level, there's a bonus section, just like there is in the original, but for some reason in this version, Mario's massive head is just sitting in the background like he's the one above all. But no matter, this was technically the best way to play the original game. but the game is still as basic as ever. However, 1-3 is where things get more challenging.
There's a sky now?
Of course there's still power-ups, but this is where some people probably dip out of the game. It's just too difficult.
Is what I said before figuring out how to skip this level.
That's right, in the level before this, there's actually these things called warp zones. With these you can skip to World 2, World 3, or World 4. Of course, I have no idea why you would pick anything you want, but sometimes you just have a hankering for World 3, and I get that. World 1-4 is the first castle level. That's right, this is the final level. Each world has 4 levels in it, leading to a total of 32 levels in the game. The castle introduces lava, fire bars, and the big bad Bowser. Or I guess this isn't Bowser. See, a glitch in this game had Bowser from every world except for 8 dying as an enemy found throughout the game. So Nintendo eventually confirmed that this wasn't Bowser and was instead a clone.
Early Mario had a lot of weird things like this, like Bowser's brother in Super Mario Bros. 2, his overalls, Luigi.
Once you defeat the big bad, you discover, hey, it's just this Toad. Who cares about Toad? World 2 of Super Mario Bros. World 2 is more of the same, being the overworld, ending in a castle, pretty much the same, but let's see what the second level has to bring.
Holy sh**.
World 2-2 introduces water to Super Mario Bros. With all new enemies, new gimmicks, everything. Having calming music, random fish, bubbles that push you. Everything is here to set up the future of platforming video games forever. What a revolutionary video game this is. That's why they made a PC port. Yeah, in 1986, Nintendo got Hudson Soft, the guys who went on to create Mario Party, to create Super Mario Bros. Special to release on Japanese computers. Super Mario Bros. Special was originally seen as a PC port of the original game, but with some of the worst graphics ever seen. But it ends up being its own game, almost being a sequel to Super Mario Bros. It has brand new levels, brand new power-ups, and builds upon what was put in the original game. It's a really cool experience, except that isn't what it normally looks like. As this game was made for PCs in 1986, the game is one of the slowest and worst playing Mario games ever released. The game was a good concept, but I think there are much better ways of playing the original Super Mario Bros., such as the arcade. Not only was Super Mario Bros. Available in PlayChoice 10 arcade machines in arcades, Nintendo also made a special version of the game called VODS Super Mario Bros. That took the original levels they created and turned it into a harder game to play. Of course, if you're at the arcade, you're not just going to go through the entire game and play it all at once. The idea is that this game just wants your money. But VODS Super Mario Bros. Helped Nintendo inspire the sequel Super Mario Bros. 2. Super Mario Bros. 2, or as we know it in the West, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, takes the original Super Mario Bros. And just makes it harder. Some of the levels come straight from VODS Super Mario Bros., but the rest is just original. This game introduces the poison mushroom. No, it's not helpful, but it's a new challenge to the game. It also introduces wind, bigger trampolines, and many other things to make the game harder and better than the original.
Except Nintendo of America didn't think so.
Nintendo of America saw Super Mario Bros. 2 and thought the game was too hard and decided to scrap the release and go into the archives of Nintendo of Japan and reskin a game known as Doki Doki Panic and make it into our version of Super Mario Bros. 2. This Super Mario Bros. 2 introduced many different things to Mario as well, such as Shy Guys, Peach's Float, Toad running fast, the idea of Luigi being taller. Many things in Super Mario Bros. 2, the American version, became Mario staples. How fun! Of course, due to Super Mario Bros. 2 not being a Mario game, it removed a lot of the things that the original Super Mario Bros. Had, such as Goombas, mushrooms, fire flowers. But for being a second game, I think this is welcome. The Legend of Zelda does the same thing, with Zelda 2 being almost a completely different type of video game compared to the first one. However, the world came back together to release Super Mario Bros. 3, and have it be the same version everywhere. Super Mario Bros. 3 returned to the normal Mario platforming, which became the basis of the Mario franchise from then on. Back to Super Mario Bros., World 2-3 has a Mario running across a bridge, dodging the fish that try to kill you from the level earlier. It shows that all of these levels are connected, even if it doesn't really feel like it at this point in time. But it all ends in another castle. The castle is pretty much the same as the previous castle, with a few more platforming challenges, making for an overall more difficult castle than before. But it's pretty much the same thing we're all used to. Dodge lava, run to the end, fight
Bowser,
and save another Toad. Pretty simple game. World 3 introduces us to a different time of day, night, as well as introducing snow. Each tree is white instead of green, which was meant to depict snow.
At least that's what I saw.
However, it is pretty much more of the same, with not much really changing throughout World 3.
I know some of you freaks skipped here, didn't you?
In 3.3, it's possible to jump over the flagpole, but I honestly don't know why you would want to do that. 3.4 is pretty much the same as the other castles, except the
Bowser
fight is ever so slightly harder, with massive chunks of bricks being in the way when you want to jump over
Bowser.
Otherwise, it's a pretty simple castle all things considered. Super Mario Bros. Was also ported to many random places, with the most significant being Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color. This version of the game added a world map, added Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, and challenges. This is known as the best version of Super Mario Bros. That has ever released, but there's one giant problem.
Or should I say tiny problem?
The screen crunch. It's very hard to see the majority of the game itself, but it's an interesting way to play the game. Or you could play it on the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance version of Super Mario Bros. Is just Super Mario Bros. Nothing interesting about it. World 4 is more of the same, with Lakitu being here too. The castle is where things get interesting. The castle is a puzzle level where you have to walk specific ways to complete the level. This would normally take a lot of trial and error, making this level technically the longest one in the entire game.
Because it's infinite.
This idea would later be reused in future Mario games, such as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels and New Super Mario Bros. Wii. But it's pretty easy to tell which way to go. But it's still a unique way of playing the castle before you go to fight
Bowser.
World 5 and 6 are the same old, with you being able to skip them in World 4 2 through multiple warp zones in case you were interested. At this point in time, we've been introduced to every single type of level that we're going to see throughout the game, so I wouldn't be expecting anything unique in World 5 or World 6. Anyway, let's try World 5-3.
Wait, that's just 1-3 again!
World 5-3 is exactly the same as World 1-3, but the only difference being that there's bullet bills flying at you the entire time. Otherwise, it's literally just the same damn thing. This isn't the only time it happens either. World 5-4 is probably the same as one of the other castles, and World 6-4 is the World 1 castle with no differences except for
Bowser
throwing hammers at you the entire time. What the hell is happening? Oh well, thank God World 7-1 is different. World 7 has more and more bullet bills leading up to the end of the game. If you were a weirdo, you would have skipped here.
There is literally no reason to skip here, so why even give the option? Would you rather skip to World 7 or World 8? Like, what's the point of skipping to World 7?
Let me just try World 7-2 then.
Wait, that's just 2-2 again!
World 7-2 is exactly the same as 2-2, with no differences at all. Funnily enough, this level is repeated again in the Minus World. The Minus World is a glitched level that you can access all the way back in World 1-2, but you can't complete it. The Famicom Disk System version of the game has unique Minus World levels, but these levels weren't ever meant to be played. 7-3 follows 7-2, so let's see what this one is.
Wait, that's just 2.
Yep, that's right, 7-3 is just the same as 2-3. I have no idea why there are so many repeating levels. I couldn't find an answer. Just people disappointed, but at least it gets us out to finally talk about World 8. World 8-1. This one has a lot of pipes. That's pretty much all I can say. Why don't we take this time out to try Super Mario All-Stars on the Wii? See, on Mario's 25th anniversary, Nintendo released Super Mario All-Stars, a compilation of Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 2, and Super Mario Bros. 3. What a collection. Let's have a look at the brand new Wii versions of these games.
Wait, that's just Super Mario All-Stars again!
Nintendo decided that for the 25th anniversary, they'd just do Super Mario All-Stars, but again, it's just a ROM of the original, but put on a Wii. Nintendo already had a way of doing this called the Virtual Console. At least with Super Mario 3D All-Stars on the Nintendo Switch, they actually changed a few things in the game and made it HD. This is just lazy!
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pissed.
World 8-2, this one sucks. This takes Lakitu and combines it with bullet bills to create the stupidest level ever invented. There's a secret 1-up, that's probably the coolest thing. There's also this death trap where the gap is way too far to jump over. Who designed this? What's up with you, Nintendo? World 8-3 also sucks. There's just a lot of Hammer Bros in these giant empty spaces with castle walls around. I always get stuck on this level and I have no idea why. But this level leads to the big finale of the game. World 8-4.
It's just a lot of pipes.
World 8-4 is a puzzle, a challenge. Really need to think about where you're going to beat this one. This level, although the final level, is probably the easiest of World 8. You just need to remember the order of the pipes that you go in. For some reason, there's an underwater section. No idea why, but it's there. You finally get up to the real Bowser. the first time in this entire game, and you now have your chance to do the unthinkable. You defeat him the same way you do every other Bowser, by jumping over him and touching the axe. Once you touch the axe, you win. And this is when you finally meet the person you've been saving this whole time. Princess Toadstool.
She wasn't called Princess Peach yet. I mean, technically, in Japan she was, but outside of Japan, who the hell is that?
And then she introduces you to a harder version of the game, which all it does is replace Goombas with these weirdo things.
And it makes some platforms smaller, can't forget that.
Super Mario Bros. Went on to be packed in with the NES, becoming one of the highest selling games of all time, and spawned sequel after sequel. Mario became one of the most recognizable characters to ever exist, and Super Mario Bros. Was re-released 100,000 times. Funnily enough, the only console that you can't play Super Mario Bros. On that's released by Nintendo is the Nintendo 64 and original DS. Super Mario Bros. Was released in many places, such as the NES, the Famicom Disk System, the Versus Arcade Machine, the Game & Watch, although technically that's just a different game with the same title, the Nintendo Play Choice 10 arcade machines, the Famicom Disk System again is All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros., many compilation cartridges on the NES, the SNES but with the Super Mario World, the Teleview, the Game Boy Color, and Animal Crossing in Japan but only was available as a competition prize and was completely unused in the worldwide release but then was removed from the upgrade to the Japanese version of Animal Crossing, but also is in the original version of the game on Nintendo 64, on the Game Boy Advance, on the Wii Virtual Console, in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, on the Wii again, on the Wii Virtual Console again, but the question mark block is replaced with the number 25 on the block, on the 3DS Virtual Console, on the Wii U Virtual Console, in NES Remix, as Super Luigi Bros. In NES Remix 2, in Ultimate NES Remix as Speed Mario Bros., in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, in Amiibo Tap, on the NES Classic and the Famicom Classic, on Switch Online, as Super Mario Bros. 35, which no longer exists, and on the new Game & Watch.
Can you tell I like this game?
It's safe to say that Super Mario Bros. Left an impact on the world that's still unraveling to this day. Without it, we wouldn't have games like Sonic, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Uncharted, BioShock, Halo, or even Wii Music. But going back to it, I don't think I can look at it that fondly. It's cool, yes, but comparing it to Super Mario Bros. 3 or World, I think it's one of the worst mainline Mario games ever!
Unless you include Super Mario Bros. Special. Hi, I'm Charlie and back, and I've played the Forbidden Mario game.
In 1985, Nintendo released Super Mario Bros. For the NES and the Famicom, but that's not where this story ends. Nintendo at this point in their life had been licensing out a few of their characters and arcade games to other companies, such as Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. to Coleco and Mario Bros. To the Atari for consoles, but they also felt that they needed to get into the PC market. Some of their games had been released on Japanese computers, such as Mario Bros. Special, Punchball Mario Bros. And a sequel to Donkey Kong 3 that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, and all of these games were developed by a company known as Hudson Soft. After the release of Super Mario Bros., Hudson and Nintendo came to an agreement to release a port of Super Mario Bros. To Japanese computers by the name of Super Mario Bros. Special. However, as development went further into this port, Hudson realized that they would need to create their own version of Super Mario Bros., as the PC could not handle the NES original. So instead, they made their own game, basically being a sequel to the first Super Mario Bros. Now, of course, because the game is on PC, it looks like this.
What the was that?
But luckily, fans of Mario have made ROM hacks and other fun ways of playing Super Mario Bros. Special and making it actually playable. So I decided to check out the Super Mario Bros. Special 35 anniversary hack made for the original Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Entertainment System. World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Special is very similar to the original World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Of course, there's a lot less stuff in this PC game. Just a few question mark blocks, a few Koopa Troopers, Goombas, but this level is actually very different. You'll also notice that the colors are different.
No!
But the level being an introduction to Super Mario Bros. Pretty much stays the same throughout the level, and that repeating nature repeats throughout World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Special itself. Each level is really just a new interpretation of the original World 1 levels. One unique thing about World 1 too is that the entire level isn't just underground. Instead, it has both an underground section and an overworld section, with the underground just being the main focus of the level, with the overworld kind of just being this little extra thing. Otherwise, World 1.3 and World 1.4 are just new versions of pre-existing levels and themes, with 1-4 almost being identical, just with the fire bars in different locations. World 2 also follows this same principle, although to a much more obvious degree. World 2-1 is overworld, World 2-2 is underwater, World 2-3 is overworld but on a bridge, and World 2-4 is obviously a castle.
No way!
However, 2-3 starts to show the wacky side of Super Mario Bros. Special with the level ending underground instead of the overworld, which never happened in the original game at all. It's quite a unique thing, but you start to question why there's a castle underground, but I guess that doesn't matter. At the end of the castle, you of course fight
Bowser
and continue on your merry way. World 3 is where things get wacky. The first level is actually an underwater level, very similar to World 2-2, but this time it also combines the idea of World 2-3 with the bridges with fish jumping out of the water. It's quite a unique level that is completely different to what you would see in the base game, really showing that Hudson Soft wanted to make something different. You'll also notice taller trees, more invisible blocks, but the level itself is just pretty empty. But you know what? This is fine. This is kind of just like the real Lost levels, and what should have been Super Mario Bros. 2, instead of the two other versions that we got. Of course, I mean this NES ROM hack. The original version of this game should never really be considered anything. World 3-2 introduces a fun glitch. You can get soft-locked. It's kind of annoying, but that's the PC jank you get. Other than that, World 3-2 has two mushrooms right next to each other, which is something that you never see in Mario games, and also the introduction of a brand new theme, one that's not seen in the base game at all.
Autumn. Or fall, if that's what you want to call it.
Yes, after you enter the pipe, you somehow travel to a different place where it's daytime again and everything is orange. This theme repeats throughout the game sometimes, but it's very interesting that it's here at all. World 3-3 is basically identical to World 1-3 of both this game and the original game, so there's not much to note here. It's just that half the level takes place underground for some reason. I guess that's unique. Here you can find a little pathway set up for a 1-up so it can get to you. Well, it was fun to try. The castle is once again more of the same, except this time introducing two things to Super Mario Bros. Being the barrels from Donkey Kong, which just like in Donkey Kong you have to jump over, and the hammer from Donkey Kong, which is the only thing that will allow you to destroy the barrels. A lot of elements from the arcade games made its way into Super Mario Bros. Special, most likely due to Hudson Soft also working on the PC ports of both Mario Bros. And Donkey Kong. World 4 returns to the similarities of the original game, with World 4-1 introducing Lakitu. However, there's another new power-up in this game, something never seen before: the wing. The wing, just like any other Mario flying power, lets you fly. However, due to this game being really janky, really all it does is allow you to look like you're swimming in the air for a little bit. It's a bit unique, but it doesn't compare to what's coming. World 4-2 introduces multiple elements from the arcade game Mario Bros., being ice that can fall down and kill you, and the crabs. They work the same way as they do in the arcade games, just making it so you can't jump on the crabs, but they're pretty fun additions to the game. There wasn't much past Mario games to take things from, so the fact that they took it from Mario Bros is actually really cool. World 4-3 does more with the mushroom platforms, and World 4-4 is your standard run-of-the-mill castle. Not much to add here. World 5 introduces those bugs from Mario Bros, just like in the arcade game, and they're just as annoying here. It also introduces bloopers to the overworld, alongside some of the cool things from underwater levels being in the overworld, alongside platforming on these smiling clouds, but otherwise it's just your standard Mario level. A lot of these levels seem like there could have been levels in Super Mario Maker, as they're full of some of the most random things you'll ever see in a Mario game in no random order and with no logic. Then World 5-3 and World 5-4 just seemingly repeat other levels from earlier in this game.
Well, that's just great.
World 6 does more with Lakitu and more Mario Maker type levels, with question mark blocks being everywhere. But World 6-2 has this weird thing where the bonus underground section is actually in the overworld theme, despite very clearly being an underground bonus world. World 6-3 once again does the sky theme, but this time makes all of the platforms out of snow, which adds a bit of uniqueness to this level, but it's just the same old same old. This game isn't really that difficult, all things considered, it's just different. Comparing it to the other Mario games shouldn't really count, as this thing is its own beast. It would have been fantastic to see this on an actual NES, but I understand why it stayed on Japanese computers. It's also annoying that Nintendo have never re-released this game, or ever even acknowledged its existence. World 7 is more of the same, so I think it's time to talk about everything else got added to this game. All of these additions are really cool additions, to be honest. I would love to see things like the hammer appear in the Mario games now. The rest of World 7 is pretty mundane, all things considered. It's when we get to World 8 that things are different.
I lied.
World 8-1 is very different, yes, with the mushroom platforms and all that, and the beginning of World 8-2 is cool with it being underwater, but then World 8-2 is pretty much the same as World 8-3 from Super Mario Bros. Everyone say it with me.
Big castle walls with annoying hammer bros with random platforming in the middle of nothing.
This is then followed by World 8-3, which is pretty much the same as one of the earlier castles, but they put the castle in the underground theme instead, which is kinda weird. The World 8 castle is actually one of the easiest castles in the entire game. It's just really long. It's a lot of jumps of faith, followed by jumps into pipes. Pretty simple if you ask me, but it's still somewhat fun compared to the original Super Mario Bros. I don't know if I've just played the original game that many times, but I really like how, although this just takes elements from the original Super Mario Bros. And a few of the other games that are in the Mario universe, they managed to make something different, something unique. It really feels like a sequel to Super Mario and I'm done. You save Peach, but instead of giving you a new challenge, she just says how fantastic you are. Thanks Peach, I really needed that. Overall, Super Mario Bros. Special is a fun, special version of Super Mario Bros., but I think the game would have been a lot more interesting if it actually released on the NES instead of the PC. It's quite a unique game, so if you're ever looking for another NES Mario game to play, you should try out this ROM hack. It's great.
So I wonder if there's a special version of me. That's better. Hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and I'm annoyed. I recently was looking at my December calendar, and it says today I have to talk about Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. I hate Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. I always have. Why would Nintendo make this awful thing? Why would Nintendo do this to me?
Super Mario Bros. 2, otherwise known as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, is the only Japanese exclusive mainline Mario game because Americans found it too hard. Super Mario Bros. 2 was developed as a harder version of the original game, inspired by the arcade game vs. Super Mario Bros., an arcade exclusive version of Super Mario Bros. That was developed to be a bit harder due to the nature of it being an arcade game. Normally, arcade games are made hard to entice the player to keep putting quarters in, so the arcade company can rake in their cash. And Vs Super Mario Bros., alongside the rest of the Vs games, were made the same way. Funnily enough, 6 levels from the arcade game were actually in Lost Levels, as the developers just had so much fun developing the arcade game. And with no time to develop the game while also working on The Legend of Zelda, some things needed to be this way. Super Mario Bros. 2 was released for the Famicom Disk System, the brand new add-on for the Famicom, where you can use these special type of floppy disks that aren't floppy disks, as they don't flop, and play better games with more space and better sound. Of course, Super Mario Bros. 2 doesn't really take advantage of this, but games like The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and more took advantage of the sound it could produce, as both of these games originally released on the Famicom Disk System before being ported to real cartridges. However, Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't so lucky. Super Mario Bros. Was stuck in the Famicom Disk System, and the game never came out outside of Japan. When the game was sent over to America, the tester at the time thought the game was way too hard to release. And he couldn't believe that Japan would ever make this game. It's just way too hard. But by this time, Japan was already working on Super Mario Bros. 3, so Nintendo of America needed a Super Mario Bros. 2.
You can't just release Super Mario Bros. 3 without Super Mario Bros. 2. What is this, Final Fantasy?
So it was on. Nintendo of America was on the search for Super Mario Bros. 2 without making a new game, because Japan already had their game, so there's no need to develop a new one. But then luckily, and seemingly out of the blue, Nintendo discovered a game that they could reskin to create the American Super Mario Bros. 2, but that's a story for another day. Eventually, the rest of the world got the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, but we had a brand new name for it. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels.
Or Super Mario Bros. For super players if you're feeling frisky.
So what makes this game different compared to the original game? Nothing.
Well, not nothing.
Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels begins with a very similar World 1, with only one difference. One that doesn't really add anything. The poison mushroom. The poison mushroom does one thing, kill you in the same way a Goomba does. It's something that you don't really notice as there's not enough of them throughout the game for it to actually be a challenge, but it makes the game a little harder. What actually makes the game harder?
All the horrible jumps and the insane amount of enemies.
Every stage has some stupid part of the level thrown in. Every level is harder than the last. Everything is just wrong. This game, instead of feeling like its own game, feels like it's just the first Super Mario Bros. With a new coat of paint on it, which is fine for other games like Super Mario Bros. Special as it was bringing the game to a whole new place to play, but for this, it just feels lazy. This game feels like it's punishing you for playing it. There's so many random death traps hidden throughout this game that you would never notice, and you know the whole warp zone thing from the original game? In this game, if you use warp zones, you'll never be able to 100% the game. Tough luck, you gotta play every single level in the entire game. World 1 follows the same themes as World 1 of the original game, with the only real difference being that some of the graphics look different, but overall it really is just the same game. That becomes even more apparent in the Super Mario All-Stars version of the game, where both Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels use the same graphics for both, making both of them seem as if they're just two parts of one whole game.
And that's what it feels like. This isn't Super Mario Bros. 2. This is Super Mario Bros. 1.5. But there was already two other Super Mario Bros. 1.5s, being the Versus arcade machines and Super Mario Bros. Special. There wasn't any need for this to be its own thing. I would have understood it if it was an expansion to the original game. But it isn't. It calls itself the sequel to this. What the hell is this?
Even the bosses are the same. Where you fight
Bowser
and hit the axe on the other side, everything is just the same thing, with more and more ridiculous jumps and tricks that you would never figure out without Googling it, which obviously wasn't a thing when this game came out. I will say the trampolines in 2-1 were quite fun to use, and the wind in the future levels also adds a unique twist to the Mario formula. But you can only take so much when comparing it to the original, as it's just the same thing. World 2.2 finally gives us something different by adding invisible blocks that you would never figure out how to use, so I guess that's interesting. This game feels like a waste of time, but we're not even close to the amount of time that it wastes. World 3 follows the same shtick as World 3 of the original, being snowy levels with just a lot of grey. With 3-1, you have to start thinking about the way you're going to use Mario's momentum to jump over obstacles, instead of just jumping. Which, yes, adds a bit of difference between the two games, but really it's just stupid. World 3.2 takes on what World 2.2 should have been, being the first underwater level of the bunch, and it feels so similar to the original game's 2.2 that I wouldn't be shocked if you mix the two up. They're practically exactly the same thing, with no difference between the two. I guess it's Paratroopers and Koopa Troopers for some reason, but everything else is just the same thing. World 3.3 has some hard jumps, and World 3.4 has you fight
Bowser
following a specific pattern that you were supposed to follow. World 4 does more of the same when compared to the original, and World 5 follows suit, with some stupid puzzles and some stupid platforming. See, in World 5.1 there's a section of the level where you need to create an invisible block. However, it's difficult to gain enough momentum to jump on top of the block, as you can't make the screen go back after you go forward, making it insanely easy to get soft-locked and needing the Nintendo Switch Rewind feature. World 5.3 does more of the same, and we start to get to repeating levels just like we did in the original game. And by the time you get to the end of World 6, you just get annoyed. Every single level just feels like a repeat of what you've already done, whether you've played the original game or not.
It's even hard to joke about it. It's a nothing game.
This game is hated by the masses. So much in fact that people would rather take their version of Super Mario Bros. 2, which isn't even a Mario game, over whatever the hell this monstrosity is. It's just a bad game that's difficult and completely ruins all enjoyment you had with the original game. Don't get me started on World 7.1. What a poorly designed level. The wind makes it annoying, the amount of piranha plants and the random guessing you have to do to work out how this game works is just outstanding. It's not a fun game whatsoever. World 7.4 just feels like an endless maze even though it's a level you've already played before, which finally brings you to World 8. The one we've all been waiting for. The finale of the game.
Right?
World 8 is the worst collection of Mario levels I have ever witnessed. The amount of utterly ridiculous platforming, timing, RNG, and more just makes this world one of the worst things I have ever played. How are you meant to figure out you need to jump on this paratrooper to jump over this huge gap? The Hammer Bros, my god, you thought you hated them before? In this game, they just feel so much more jumpy and they are everywhere. World 8 2 brings back the wonderful autumn levels from Super Mario Bros. Special and just makes a harder version of World 8 3 from the original game. It even gets worse when you find out that this level is a puzzle level and the only real ending is to jump on a brick that reveals a find that no one would ever find. It took me so long to figure out what to do in this level, it just seems like an endless puzzle. How would any person be able to figure out what the hell to do in this level without looking it up?
And look, I understand wanting to make a challenging game. We all want a game to, be hard and give us a challenge. But when it's stupidly hard compared to the other Mario games you've made, you start to question, what the hell is this game?
When you finally figure out what you're supposed to do, you're greeted to what I consider to be the best part of the game. World 8 3 is such a unique level. It's stupidly hard, yes, but the level has you platforming across the clouds, which I think is the coolest idea in the entire game. Having sky levels like this wasn't really a thing at this point in Mario's life, so having it here just feels unique. It feels different. Why couldn't more levels be like this? Of course, I hate this level due to how impossible it is, but I like Nintendo's creativity here. Well done. World 8 4 is where things go from hard to annoying. World 8 4 is an endless puzzle that goes on forever that you have to make sure you aren't wasting time. There's several pipes to go into, and if you stuff up once, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of the level. What's worse is that sometimes the puzzle parts of this level don't work correctly, so you're stuck wondering what you did wrong. I never want to have to play this game again. It's the most unfun level in the entire game. It took me so many tries to figure out what to do, and I just never want to experience this hell ever again. It's the worst pain in the butt I've ever felt.
And it currently hurts to sit!
So this level must be awful. This level gives you no time to complete it, with me having under 20 seconds to beat the entire final room of the stage. You also have to deal with two Bowsers. No, one of them isn't one of those
Bowsers.
Is instead Bowser's brother.
Don't ask.
But when you finally beat the real Bowser, you're brought to a door, which leads to Peach, where they stuff up how the sprites look, because the black in the sprites is actually the background and not the sprites itself, so when they change the background to blue, it actually stuffs everything up. You'd think that's the end of the game. You really would. Well, let me warn you, it's only just the beginning. After completing World 8, you're brought to World 9.
No!
But don't worry, it's not actually that hard. Each level is just some sort of little bonus thing that mostly has you swimming in the overworld. Bowser's brother returns, and the final stage is just some Japanese characters. Quite a sweet little ending that you only unlock if you don't use any warp zones. So that's Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. It's an annoying game with even more annoying levels, but only having 9 worlds of 4 levels, that isn't so bad. Oh god.
There's 4 more worlds?!
That's right. After you complete the entire game 8 times in a row without using warp zones, you unlock worlds A, B, C, and D. That's right, 8 times. You have to play this awful game 8 times to unlock the bonus worlds. And what are the bonus worlds? They're just harder versions of other levels alongside some original levels that are just as hard. World D makes this whole Bowser thing even more confusing, with Bowser's brother returning, only to be a fake
Bowser's brother,
followed by another
Bowser
at the end of the level. But that's different again when you play the Super Mario All-Stars version, where the two of them are replaced by the original versions of the two. Why is it different? I don't know. Nintendo just wanted to be funny. How could you do this, Nintendo? What the hell are you thinking? What the hell is this game?
Super Mario Bros. 2, otherwise known as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, is the worst Mario game I have ever played. It's really hard for no reason, it's almost impossible to complete, and it's just one of the worst things ever made. But at least it's an actual Mario game. Unlike this sucker! Hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and my calendar just says the number 2. I don't know what that means. Unless that means I have to talk about... oh god.
Super Mario Bros. 2. No, not Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, which is the sequel to Super Mario Bros. In Japan known as Super Mario Bros. 2 that wasn't released outside of Japan because it was too hard, the Super Mario Bros. 2 that the rest of the world got. Video games always came first in Japan, with the rest of the world waiting years to get new games, which was the case when by 1986, the US only had the first Super Mario Bros., while Japan had both Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 2. The US had been waiting for the next game in the franchise for a while now, and it didn't help that the original Super Mario Bros. 2 was released on the Famicom Disk System while the US only had the original NES, which had no way to play the Famicom Disk System games. Other popular games for the Famicom Disk System, such as The Legend of Zelda and Metroid, were being ported to cartridges as Nintendo had no intent on releasing the Disk System in the US, but due to this Super Mario Bros. 2 game being way too hard for Americans, it stopped it ever coming out. By 1988, there was still no Super Mario Bros. 2. Nintendo of Japan were working on Super Mario Bros. 3 with a planned tie-in to a Hollywood movie called The Wizard. However, Super Mario Bros. 2 still hadn't come out in the US. Instead, they were looking through the archives of Nintendo to see if they could possibly take a game that already exists, replace the characters with Mario characters, and have Super Mario Bros. 2. In 1987, Nintendo was currently in a deal with Fuji Television, a huge Japanese television company known for creating some of Japan's top TV shows, alongside being the biggest news networks in Japan. The relationship began with Nintendo creating a new version of Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels in collaboration with Fuji TV subsidiary Nippon Broadcasting System. This game was known as All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros., which took levels from Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, and Versus Super Mario Bros. All Night Nippon was the name of a popular Japanese radio show, with many radio personalities being in the game either at the start of each world or replacing the Goombas, Piranha Plants, and Toads. This game features 8 worlds followed by worlds A, B, and C, just like Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, and very few copies of the game were ever made, with there only being just over 3,000 being won by a lottery or being sold on one day in Tokyo. Although the game was almost just the same as Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels and Versus Super Mario Bros., this kinda counts as its own game, being the 5th game in total to use the exact same style.
We really need to come up with something different.
In 1987, Nintendo and Fuji TV teamed up again during an event known as Yumi Kojo 87, where Nintendo developed a game using characters from the event to create a game known as Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic, otherwise known as Dream Factory Heart Pounding Panic. It was released on the Famicom Disk System, and although it had a few Mario elements in it, like the power block from the arcade game Mario Bros., the game was its own game with a whole new way of killing enemies. Instead of killing enemies by jumping on them, you had to pick up a plant from the ground and throw it at enemies. This game, however, was actually originally a Mario game all along, as the game began development as a prototype Super Mario platforming game, which was shown as a different way to do the Mario style of platforming. It wasn't until Fuji Television wanted to team up with Nintendo again that they turned the game into Doki Doki Panic. While Nintendo of America were looking for a new version of Super Mario Bros. 2, they saw this game and took it as the new Super Mario Bros. 2. Nintendo reverted all the changes that they had made to the game and made it into what we know now. Eventually, Super Mario Bros. 2 got a release in Japan known as Super Mario USA, which is exactly the same game, just with USA at the end of the title and released after Super Mario World for some reason. So I guess Super Mario Bros. 2 is a Mario game, but it was never meant to be the second Super Mario Bros. Game. Instead, it was a prototype that became its own game. But that doesn't matter. It's officially the second game. So how is the game?
I hate it.
World 1 is pretty simple. It starts off with you falling from the sky, no idea where you come from, falling onto some hills. This is where you get introduced to this game's first original enemy, the Shy Guy. Yes, Shy Guys actually originated in this game, which means they originated in Doki Doki Panic, not a Mario game.
Shy Guy is just a foster child.
And it's also the introduction to pretty much every single mechanic in the entire game. Picking up plants, throwing them at enemies, picking up another plant, opening a door, finding a mushroom while a new version of the original Super Mario Bros. Theme plays. Exciting. In this game you get to pick between 4 characters: Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Princess Toadstool, otherwise known as Princess Peach. These 4 characters became the classic 4 characters to play as, making their large return as a group in Super Mario 3D World. Mario is your straight man, can't do much, he's your classic Mario platforming. Now Luigi is interesting. As introduced in Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, Luigi is slippery and can jump higher than any other character. Although this was introduced in the Lost Levels, this game was the first game to introduce the fact that Luigi was taller than Mario ever so slightly.
Finally!
Princess Peach can do a little float jump in the air. Wherever you jump as her, you can hold your jump in the air for a bit. This was the first introduction of this movement of Princess Peach and became a part of her character in almost every single Mario game following it. Toad can run fast. That's his gimmick. He can't jump as high, most likely because of his stubby little feet, and that's about it. Every level ends with a boss battle, with most of them being Birdo. Yes, this is the first introduction of the classic character that appears in every single Mario spin-off and nothing else. To kill Birdo, you need to pick up Birdo's eggs and throw it at Birdo.
Birdo. We love Birdo.
However, every world ends with a different boss fight, a much more harder boss fight. This stupid rat just throws bombs at you and it's almost impossible to kill this stupid thing. What a stupid boss fight. It was always incredibly hard to fight. It took me so long to beat this stupid rat. I hate rats, goddammit. World 2 is where we finally get the very first Super Mario desert level.
Oh, thank God.
There's normal sand, there's quicksand. It's impossible to tell the difference between the two. But you know, why would we need to know the difference? The first level, 2-1, introduces this game's replacements of pipes and piranha plants. Pipes are just these little vase type things with weird snakes coming out of the top that replace the piranha plants. Another thing this game doesn't have is power-ups. There are no power-ups whatsoever. There's a star, but power-ups? There's nothing. This game is a unique take on what Mario is, yes, but really after a while all of these levels blend into each other. While playing the game I would constantly get confused as to what level I'm currently playing. Finally, in World 2-3, a brand new final boss appears, a big snake. You beat the snake the same way, everything is just the same. I feel like time is repeating over and over again in an endless cycle that just never ends. Every world is the same damn thing. World 3 introduces sky levels, where the first level is almost like a getting over it stage. If you don't get to the top in time, tough luck, you're dead. Once you get to the top, you start to realize that almost every single level is pretty much the exact same type of level, just over and over again. World 3 too is different in the sense that instead of going up, you go down. It just feels very similar to some of the other levels in this game. Nothing feels different. Everything feels the same. In this level, we also get Shy Guys who are riding Ostros.
That's what they're called!
Once you get to the boss fight, you get the most annoying boss fight ever. Whenever you go to pick up one of those little mushroom things, you fall to the ground. Because of the AI that Birdo uses, it's almost impossible to get back up to the top to actually fight Birdo in the first place. It's a badly designed boss fight in a badly designed game. World 3-3 continues this trend that I haven't even started on yet. Almost half of the levels in this game involve you getting a key from a special room and then either falling down or getting up to a door with a lock on it in order to beat the stage. Every world is the same damn thing. Platforming, underground, key. Platforming, underground, key. It's just the same damn thing every time I play the game.
And I'm mad!
And at the end of the level, you beat another rat. Fantastic. Unless you played on the Game Boy Advance where you fight Robo Birdo. How fantastic. Why is it different? I don't know. No one knows. World 4 introduces snow. How fun. How unique. We're finally getting something different in a Mario game. Except it's a bit weird. At one point in each level, you enter a rocket ship to then fight a boss. How about 4-2? I wonder what that one's like. You run across some whales. 4-3, an annoying boss fight that's just a big fireball that's almost impossible to defeat. World 5, that's just the same themes as World 1 and 3, but at night time now.
Oh, thank God!
World 5-3 is another underground level where you fight a giant crab just for the fun of it. World 6 is desert themed again.
I think they ran out of themes.
World 7 is in the sky. Except this time, there's only 2 levels in World 7. Instead of having a World 7-3, it just ends. World 7-2 is the final fight. You fight against Wart. Doesn't this guy look familiar? Wart, otherwise known as Mamu, first appeared in this game, to then appear in The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, alongside a bunch of other Mario characters for some reason. After you finally defeat Wart, you save Subcon or whatever the plot of this game is. Who cares about what the plot of this game is? It really doesn't matter, because then it's revealed that the whole game was just a dream.
You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, the entire game was just a dream. So what was the point then? Why? What a cop-out. Funnily enough, Wart being in The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening actually makes a lot more sense when you find out Link's Awakening is also a dream.
No!
So is it the same dream universe? I don't know, but Super Mario Bros. 2 is a nice enough game. It has some interesting ideas thrown into the game and makes for a unique game. But I can't believe it's Super Mario Bros. 2. The game is just repetitive, boring, and truly the worst 2D Mario game if we don't count Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels.
So thank you, Nintendo, for finally making me talk about this game so I can play Super Mario Land. Was it all a dream? Well, at least I don't have to play Super Mario Bros. 2 now. Hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and I'm portable now. And in black and white.
Super Mario Land.
We're making sure the audio levels are correct this time.
The game released in 1989 in Japan and after Super Mario Bros. 3, sorta. Super Mario Land released after Super Mario Bros. 3 in Japan, but before Super Mario Bros. 3 in the US and everywhere else. Why? Couldn't tell you. But the game released alongside the Game Boy as a launch title, and is the very first handheld Mario game if we don't include the Game & Watch games. There's only 4 worlds in this game, making it the shortest Mario game ever. The game was purely created to sell the Game Boy, and have it as the game that comes with the system. They wanted this game to be different from the console counterparts. This can't be the same as main Mario. Every time a franchise went from being on console to portable, the portable one was always some sort of spin-off. It was never a part of the mainline series. Look at Secret Agent Clank. Do you think that's a mainline Ratchet & Clank? Well, you're wrong, and Super Mario Land was really the first time this ever happened. This isn't Super Mario Bros. 4, or 3, depending on where you live. This is Super Mario Land. That's a different thing, goddammit. So what is Super Mario Land?
Bad.
It's not bad, it's just boring. The game takes place in Sarasaland, where you have to stop Tatanga because you kidnapped Princess Daisy. Tatanga? That's a little alien in a spaceship that's a little annoying little brat man who stole Daisy. There's not much known about this guy. He comes from space, reappears in Super Mario Land 2, has a spirit in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and is in Super Mario Bros. And Friends When I Grow Up for MS-DOS.
My favourite Nintendo console.
World 1 begins with the Birabuto Kingdom. This is where we get introduced to new power-ups and new enemies. Instead of Goombas, there's Goombos.
What possible difference could there be?
Nothing, really. Don't really know why there's a difference, but there is. There's also Bombshell Koopas. Instead of doing what normal Koopa Troopers do, the shell blows up. Fun. I know. And there's flies.
Great, because we all love flies.
And then the power-ups. There's the Super Mushroom, the Star which plays the Can-Can, and the Super Ball Flower. What's that, you may ask? It's pretty similar to the Fire Flower, except this time, the ball that you shoot out bounces around, and it's pretty boring, if you ask me. Instead of having an underground level as World 1-2, it has a sky level. Why? Because each world only has 3 levels in it. Yeah, that's right, 4 worlds with 3 levels each. That's nothing. So yes, that makes World 1-3 the castle level, although technically it's inside a pyramid, but we don't really talk about that, do we? Besides from the funky platforming, it ends with a boss battle that all things considered is pretty similar to a Bowser fight from Super Mario Bros. And at the end, oh, look who it is! Oh, what? Instead of Daisy, it's
Daisy?
Yeah, instead of the boss being fake, it's the person at the end. I guess toads don't exist in Sarasaland, so instead they replace them with these fake
Daisy
things. World 2's different. I guess we were taken by a UFO at some point, as that's how the level begins, and we enter the Muda Kingdom.
Who came up with these names?
It's pretty much the same as any other level, with a bunch of platforms that go higher and higher with a few bridges as well. Look, it's an interesting level, but when you start to realize that almost every level is kind of just the same thing over and over again, you start to realize that this game's probably very unoriginal. That's not a bad thing, it makes sense that it's like this, but you just get a bit sick of it after a while. World 2-2 is where things finally get different. There's a lot of squares everywhere, but more than that, it has this sort of unique construction feel to it. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's what we got. Of course, that brings us already to the castle, or whatever. Do you see what I mean by this game being very short? Well, when I said castle, what I obviously meant was an underwater shooter level. Duh. Yeah, for some reason, this game has 2 shooter levels. Instead of traditional platforming, you're in a submarine shooting stuff at other things. It's really strange to be honest, and I don't really know if it fits, but it works. And I think that's what Super Mario Land is. These are the games where Nintendo experimented. I've seen a lot of people compare Super Mario Bros. Wonder to Super Mario Land, and you know what? I see it. That's exactly what Wonder feels like. The next game in the Land series. I mean, hell, Super Mario Land 3 was so experimental that they gave Wario the title role. I would honestly say that the shooter levels are some of the hardest levels in the entire game, as they're just so completely different to what you'd be expecting. World 3 takes you to the Eastern Kingdom, otherwise known as Easter Island. See those little statue thingos? They're just straight up Easter Island statues. This level doesn't really add anything for the first half, not until you meet the big rock things and the spikes. In several levels, there's a bunch of spikes on the ground, and the only way to get across them is to jump on a rock thing, which is apparently an enemy known as Ganchan, and travel across those spikes. I find this to be a really weird platforming thing, but you know what? It makes these levels unique from each other. But I can't help but think that these levels are just so empty compared to some of the other Mario levels. It just feels empty.
And look, if that's the goal, great! But it just seems so weird.
World 3-2 is the bane of my existence. I despise this level. This is the only underground level, and the platforming just sucks so much. From giant gaps, to the annoying spiders, to the annoying way you control Mario in this game. This level just really sucks so much. I'm not normally one for hating levels, but this level I despise with all my being. World 3-3 is another empty level with a little cave at the end. Oh, how fun! That's exactly what I wanted, an empty level with a cave at the end. Great!
I don't know if you can tell, but I don't like this game.
World 4, the final world, introducing the Chai Kingdom. What the hell does that mean? There's a bunch of bamboo, with the world looking almost identical to what World 1 is. I'm not kidding! World 4-1 and World 4-2 are just so similar. The only difference is that the second half of World 4-2 is in like a cave, I think? World 4-3 is really the only interesting one, and it's just another shooting level. There's no ground, you can never touch the ground. You're somehow in the sky, dying all the time to the most annoying enemies in the world, to then just fight the final boss, Tatanga, and die 100,000 times. This took me over 20 minutes to complete. What a horrible level to send off a horribly designed game. I hate this game so much. It's just so mid. At the end, you take a spaceship to save Daisy, and then the credits roll. Great, fantastic. Can we just stop talking about this game?
I've spent years trying to beat this game. I first got it on the 3DS Virtual Console in 2011, and only now have I actually completed the game. I can finally say that I hate this game with a burning passion. It sucks. There's nothing good about it. It's impressive that they managed to put a Mario game on the Game Boy, but when you compare it to Super Mario Land 2, what the hell is this game? Why would you do this to me, Nintendo? Why would Nintendo do this to me? Goddamn, Deja Vu was a bit.
Super Mario Bros. 3 released in Japan in 1988. And became the greatest game on the NES, and one of the greatest games of all time, as Super Mario Bros. 3 was Nintendo's magnum opus. Everything, especially all of their Mario games, had been leading up to the release of Super Mario Bros. 3. Before this, we had Super Mario Bros. 2 and 2, and for 2 out of these 3 games, they're just the same damn thing. One's just more harder than the other. So Nintendo needed something original. Something brand new as opposed to what we had had before. They experimented with making Super Mario Bros. 3 a top-down style of platformer, you know, like Sonic 3D Blast. But after trying that out, they figured out the obvious. Having the game being top-down would have just made the jumps harder and harder, and with Mario being Jumpman, making jumps harder would have just been a complete terrible idea. The game took 2 years to complete, and brought back Shigeru Miyamoto as director, as opposed to 2, which didn't really have him working on it as he was busy with other games like Super Mario Bros. 2. The game was developed to both reinvent what Mario was and continue his journey from the original 2 games, so every single sprite from the original game was recreated in order to not not carry over anything from the original game. Early in development, right after making Super Mario Bros. 1 in fact, Shigeru Miyamoto always thought that it would be a good idea for Mario to ride on some sort of animal, especially like a horse or something, so he drew up a concept and threw it on a wall. This idea would have Mario ride some sort of dinosaur-like creature, but according to the cutting room floor, the idea was shelved due to the limitations on the Famicom. There were also the introduction of the Koopalings. This was in an effort to create more and more enemies to the game and add diversity to the game. When the Koopalings were looked at by the developers of Nintendo of America, they decided to rename the Koopalings after musicians, like Ludwig von Koopa being named after Ludwig van Beethoven, just for a bit of fun. Speaking of musicians, Koji Kondo returned from the other Super Mario Bros. Games to create the soundtrack, who had a whole new philosophy while creating the music. With the original Super Mario Bros., he just focused on creating music based on a specific genre, whereas for this game, he looked at the levels in the game and wrote the music for those instead, making this game one of the hardest games he's ever had to compose for, according to himself. He also tried to explore different genres, which created the most iconic video game music of all time. Super Mario Bros. 3 was becoming one of the best games of all time, and as 1988 was underway, it was time to promote the game to make people interested.
Hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and welcome back to 1988. I just came from the future using John's time machine, and we're using it to have a look at GTV July 1988, an early look at Super Mario Bros. 3.
In Japan, the Famicom Tushin magazine, otherwise known as Famitsu, put out a VHS series known as Game TV. Their July 1988 VHS had a preview on Super Mario Bros. 3 while it was still being worked on. Let's put in the VHS and see what it has.
続いておりますが、ここで一息。野球ゲームの歴史を振り返ってみることにしましょう。
I don't know what just happened. Oh hell yeah, baseball! Well, that was a little sudden.
The VHS continues with more stuff about baseball and some sort of competition about Baseball NES, which I can only describe as two wrestlers talking to a guy because he won a competition playing the worst version of baseball ever created for a video game console.
But hey, at least there's Super Mario Bros. 3.
This footage of Super Mario Bros. 3 shows an early version of 1.1, with a few differences compared to the final version, and an in-development version of 1.5. This isn't much of a look into the early development cycle of Super Mario Bros. 3, but hey, at least it's something.
Look, I didn't explain it before, but the time travel actually takes the entire desk with me. So, the next preview of Super Mario Bros. 3 happens today!
This early version of Super Mario Bros. 3 comes from Famimaga Video, otherwise known as the Family Computer Magazine. This video is straight up just a review of Super Mario Bros. 3, with once again ever so slight differences in the levels. It also just plays the wrong Mario theme. Some of the screenshots shown within this video are actually screenshots that were later used on the box art in the US, meaning some of the screenshots show levels that weren't actually in the game.
Super Mario Bros. 3 releases today!
Yes, Super Mario Bros. 3 came out in Japan in October of 1988 to complete praise. People loved the thing, which meant when they were bringing the game over to the rest of the world, all they saw was one of the most exciting games they had ever seen. Maybe Nintendo should make a feature-length movie promoting the American release of Super Mario Bros. 3. Wouldn't that be something?
Remember The Wizard? Directed by Todd Holland for a release in 1989, Jimmy Woods suffers from PTSD after his twin sister, Jennifer, drowned 2 years earlier. Jimmy's family splits up, so he moves in with Mr. Bateman. No, not Patrick Bateman, that would be a different movie. He has two older half-brothers, Nick and Casey. Jimmy almost gets sent to an institution before his brother Casey breaks him out of his house. Then they go to LA, and then the parents try to find them, I guess. And they do that by going to a bounty hunter. What the hell is this movie, man? So then Jimmy and Casey go to Universal Studios Hollywood and find out that Jimmy is really good at video games. He plays Rad Racer with the Power Glove. My god, that's impressive. And they begin training on some arcade machines, which Power Glove doesn't really have anything to do with, so I don't understand the correlation with being good at Rad Racer with the Power Glove and being able to play on arcade machines, but hey, weirder things have happened. But when they play on these arcade machines, they get help from the Nintendo helpline. What the hell is this movie, man? Then they go into a video game competition where the final game is the unreleased Super Mario Bros. 3. And then a bunch of other stuff happens. Funnily enough, this is the first movie that Tobey Maguire appeared in. How? Now, why did Super Mario Bros. 3 show up in this random movie? A chip shortage. Duh. To cut a long story short, in 1988 there was a ROM chip shortage, as well as a shortage of Super Mario Bros. 2 existing in the US, as the Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 2 was too hard for Americans. So they found a different game from Nintendo's archives called Doki Doki Panic, which came from a collaboration with Fuji Television as a part of an ongoing relationship that started with the release of All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros. And ended with Doki Doki Panic released for the Famicom Disk System. And then they turned that game into the American version of Super Mario Bros. 2 starring Mario, Luigi, Toad and Princess Peach. Or as she was known in the US at the time, Princess Toadstool. But that led to there being a delay of Super Mario Bros. 3 because America didn't have Super Mario Bros. 2 yet. And so because they made this other game, Super Mario Bros. 2, it led to a delay of the game, technically, I guess. So we had to wait a little bit longer for Super Mario Bros. 3. But Super Mario Bros. 3 would have probably been delayed anyway, because that's how just games worked in Japan. And you know ROM chip shortages make it harder. They had to delay Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. So because of this delay, Universal Studios, you know, the same company that sued Nintendo a few years earlier, asked Nintendo of America if they could use Nintendo stuff in the movie, with that movie eventually becoming known as The Wizard. The Wizard ended up releasing in December of 1989, setting up the release of Super Mario Bros. 3 in February 1990. And because of that, they actually let another Mario game kind of slip in between, being Super Mario Land, which is just kind of interesting. But of course, The Wizard was not received well. I mean, it was just a big ad for Nintendo. Like, it has its fans, but who wants to sit and watch an ad?
Mario! Mario!
Super Mario Bros. 3 was coming out in the rest of the world, and people were hyped. People actually started importing the Japanese version just so they could play the game early. And some even made bootleg versions of the game just so they could play it on their original NES. Like, my god, people wanted Super Mario Bros. 3 that badly. Promotion was all over the place, promoting this to be the biggest game ever. And you know what? It was. I obviously didn't buy this game when it came out in 1990 or 1991 when it released in PAL regions. But what I did do is buy it for $5 in 2015. Do you want to see it? It's right here. I bought it for $5. I mean, okay, look. This game, of course, went down in gaming as one of the greatest games of all time, only being compared to Super Mario World, the next 2D Mario game that follows this one up, as both games just bring a great adventure to the Mario universe and are just both incredible. The game also got remade in Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, with that version just having some beautiful graphics and honestly my preferred way to play the game. And then it was brought to the Game Boy Advance as Super Mario Advance 4. But we're here to talk about the original game. Super Mario Bros. 3 is clearly the best Mario game, at least at the time. It doesn't have that much to compare to, though. All the Mario series had were a few arcade titles, the Game & Watch games that first try at bringing Mario into the 2D platformer genre, the harder version of the previous one, the arcade version of the previous one, the PC version of the previous one, and a game that isn't really a Mario game. So what does it have to compete to? Well, I didn't think about that one, did I? Super Mario Bros. 3 just has that sense of exploration that the other games in the series don't have. The game introduces the concept of a world map to the series, sliding, flying powers, and so much more. All of these things you can take advantage of in a modern Mario game all mostly came from Super Mario Bros. 3. It didn't try and do anything completely different like Super Mario Bros. 2 did, it truly took what the original game did, spiced it up with better graphics, and reinvented every single tiny detail about it.
it. It's absolutely brilliant. The game takes up the look of a play, with all of the elements being either attached to the background or very wood-like, giving the game a bit more energy than the previous one. The first level is just iconic, with the coloured square platforms alongside the piranha plant that shoots fireballs at you. It shows that this game is going to be just a little bit different compared to what you're used to on your usual Mario adventure. When you can finally get a power-up that isn't just a mushroom, you're introduced to not a fire flower, but the Tanuki leaf.
Holy crap.
The Tanuki leaf introduced an entire new way to play the game. In Super Mario Bros. 1 or Lost Levels, you stay on the ground for pretty much the whole game, whereas the Tanuki Leaf introduces a whole new dimension to the game that you've never even thought about exploring before. It may sound silly now that a flying power was this revolutionary of a power-up that Mario had never done before, seeing as there's a new power-up that makes you fly in every Mario game that comes out, but the Tanuki Leaf was the very first time Mario could fly, and it was incredible. After you beat the second level of the game, you're given a choice. Do you go forward on the world map to play 1-3 and 1-4, or do you skip straight to the castle? If you skip straight to the castle, you not only miss out on the Mushroom House, but also miss out on any secrets that may appear in those two levels. But if you go straight to the castle, you can get through the game quicker. What do you choose?
I mean, it's pretty obvious, no? The castle?
Wrong. If you go to 1-3, you can get a warp whistle, then skip all the way to World 8 after you also go in the castle. How fun! I mean, unless you want to actually play through the entire game, then that's pretty pointless. Well, okay then, let's continue. You may notice that on this world map, there's actually 2 castles instead of the usual 1 castle. Yeah, that's actually something else this game introduced too. This game is the first Mario game that has more than 1 castle in a world. God, we take this game for granted. But before we get to the castle, we gotta play some games with Toad. Every world has at least one of these games where you can play against Toad to try and get a few 1-ups by matching the picture. It's extremely difficult, but when you do it, you feel just so damn good. But the castle. That's what we're here for. The castle is pretty normal for Mario standards, obviously a few things were introduced, but where it gets interesting is the first boss fight. You get to fight Boom Boom.
Really? Boom Boom?
Boom Boom may be the most overused Mario villain ever, but Super Mario Bros. 3 was where he was first introduced. Doesn't mean he's any less hard to defeat though, just jump on his head a few times and you're golden. It's such a breath of fresh air not having to fight the same guy over and over again. I mean, after the previous actual Mario game had
Bowser
7 times in a row before actually getting to the real deal, it's nice to actually fight a few different enemies. And that brings us to the second castle. See, the plot of this game is to return all the kings of the different kingdoms into their human form as they were transferred into different animals.
You're also supposed to ignore the fact that all of these kings kind of just look like Luigi.
Now, in order to get these kings back to their former selves, you gotta fight the Koopalings. The Koopalings are the new world bosses, with there being 7 of them that were originally Bowser's kids, but now there aren't, but now they are, but now there aren't, but now they are, and now they aren't.
Got it.
The castles actually have you go on an airship first, a new type of level, in order to get you to the Koopalings, and each Koopaling has a different way of beating them. Well, I mean, you jump on their heads, but they all do different types of attacks. Not one Koopaling is the same. Once again, these guys got overused in the new Super games, but in this game, they are truly unique compared to what came in the past.
And now that you've saved one king, all you need to do is do it 6 more times before you get to the world that you can save Princess Peach. Pretty simple, right? So, you've beaten World 1 of Super Mario Bros. 3. Congratulations! Proud of yourself? Each world may have the same goals, the same premise, the same amount of levels or whatever, but each world is just so damn unique compared to the last. World 2 may be that classic desert Mario level that we see repeated over and over and over again. But this was actually the first real Mario game that had a desert in it. Super Mario Bros. 3 is truly an exciting game compared to the other Mario games in the series. And funnily enough, this game is still revered as one of the best Mario games, or just best video games, of all time.
Super Mario Bros. 3 is just great. If we're looking at just the mainline games, Super Mario Bros. 3 is one of the best ones. It's got original concepts, it looks great, a long and exciting journey, every damn thing about this game just works. The giant world is a personal highlight of mine. To change everything up again, Super Mario Bros. 3 has a whole world dedicated to there being huge objects. I'm not one to say making things huge in a game just makes it great, but this is just so much fun. Each boom boom fight and each crippling fight are just so fun to do as well. I may not like airship levels, like at all, but Super Mario Bros. 3 truly knows how to make everything interesting. You just need to put yourself in the headspace of, hey, this is the first time this has ever appeared in a Mario game. And then you start to realize how fantastic this game really is. I'll admit, it took me a while to get this game to click for me, but I've been having these types of realizations a lot more often now. For the longest time, I just didn't get Donkey Kong Country, but recently I played the majority of the first game on official hardware and my god, it just clicked. And I think Donkey Kong Country is a great game to compare this to. Both games truly reinvent the 2D platformer genre, using already pre-established characters, creating quite possibly the best 2D platformer in each of their respective franchises, and they just work. Both games have this feel of exploration that the other games just don't have. Granted, with Donkey Kong, his previous games aren't that complicated to figure out, but both Super Mario Bros. 3 and Donkey Kong Country feel like the next step for both of them. However, if I had to say anything bad about Super Mario Bros. 3. Look, I love Super Mario Bros. 3 just as much as the next guy, but the World 7 first castle is just absolutely terrible. I've never disliked something as much as I have that, and the same with the World 8 castle. Both are just confusing puzzles, and I just don't get them. How are you able to beat them if you don't have Google? Back in the day, you would have had to have owned a strategy guide to beat these levels, all called the Nintendo Helpline. You know, from the wizard.
Hello?
Hey, how on God's green earth do you beat the World 7 castle in Super Mario Bros. 3? It's impossible.
Oh, for God's sakes, man.
And I'm sorry, but the level that follows World 7 Castle is even worse. I think I would have never been able to actually complete this level if I didn't have the Tanuki tail. Like, how is that even possible? These problems happen in more than just these levels, and they annoy me when I'm trying to just casually play through the game. It's fine to have puzzles in games, but ones that you have absolutely no clue how to beat just throw me off so much, man. My final complaint is the third World 8 airship / tank level. The auto scroll is just way too fast. It took me way too many tries to actually beat this level.
Other than that, this game is fantastic. This game is truly a master in its craftsmanship and truly is the best 2D Mario game. If only they didn't make the perfect Mario game right afterwards. God, I love you.
Super Mario World released in Japan in 1990 and was known as Super Mario Bros. 4, the true sequel to Super Mario Bros. 3 and a follow-up that would change a generation of gamers until the end of time.
But after playing this game so many times, I think we have to ask the most important question. Is Super Mario World perfect? We looked at this topic with Super Mario Bros. 3, but I don't think we ever really came to a conclusion. Super Mario Bros. 3 is almost perfect, sure, but there's some very small things in the game that make it not as perfect as we think it is. So hi, I'm Charlie and back, and today we're going to be discussing if Super Mario World is the world's most perfect game.
I think to discuss any game's development, we need to take it all the way back to the beginning of the game's development. See what truly makes the game tick, so to speak. And it all began with just a concept behind the console it was released on.
The Sega Mega Drive was coming out, or as you Americans call it, the Genesis. The most powerful console in terms of graphics ever. Nintendo had the NES currently, but in 1989, this just wasn't comparable to what was in the arcades anymore.
The NES was created in order to be at the same level as what there was in arcades, as what was in the past wasn't great. But now the arcade machines have completely passed what the NES could do and more. The arcades were out here pushing 16-bit graphics as if it was nothing, and now Sega had done just that at home. For the first time, Sega had a leg up against Nintendo, and Nintendo needed a response.
And that's exactly what they were planning on. In the dark, dark back corners of Nintendo, they were secretly working on something known as the Super Famicom, the successor to the family computer. Nintendo were building up to their biggest console ever.
The Super Famicom was of course more powerful than the Famicom, which led the Nintendo development teams to needing to learn a new hardware in order to make new software. So that's what they did. By this point, Mario had become a sensation. Everyone around the world knew who that little red plumber was, and if they didn't know who he was by now, they were about to meet him. So, even before Super Mario Bros. 3 came out, Nintendo put Super Mario Bros. 4 into development. Yes, they were already doing Super Mario Land, but this was going to be the real Super Mario Bros. 4, the next step in the Mario lineage. But no one knew truly how to develop for the SNES, so they actually made a version of Super Mario Bros. 3 for the SNES just to get their hands around how the hardware worked. But after doing this, Nintendo was truly ready to finally develop Super Mario Bros. 4. One of the many ideas thought of for Super Mario Bros. 4 was this thing that Shigeru Miyamoto had on his wall for about 5 years at this point, a drawing of Mario riding a dinosaur. The concept came from all the way back during the development of the very first game. Shigeru Miyamoto really wanted Mario to have a dinosaur companion, but the limitations on the NES made it impossible. It doesn't mean he stopped trying though. During the development of Super Mario Bros. 3, he tried again. That's probably where the design of the dinosaur went the furthest. But even in that game, it was kinda just morphed into the Tanuki power-up. But finally, now that the SNES was powerful enough, making this idea that Shigeru Miyamoto always had was finally about to come true. The dinosaur became known as Yoshi, or Yoshi, and this snowballed into the rest of Super Mario World's development.
The game was eventually renamed to Super Mario World, although in Japan they did stick with the Super Mario Bros. 4 part of the title as a subtitle for the game. But this whole world factor that was now a part of the game's title really pushed the game forward in its development.
Now, the initial idea behind the game, and really the initial idea behind any Mario game, is to not only make the game fun to veteran players of the Mario series, but to also make the game more accessible to any new players. Make it possible for a literal newborn to pick up a game and be able to play it easy peasy.
Okay, maybe not an actual newborn, but you get the idea.
But that is truly just the foundation behind the game. If they wanted to make something different from just the first Super Mario Bros. Game, they needed something unique. And that's what they did. In Super Mario Bros. 3, we had the introduction of the world map, a way to show how each level connects to each other all on one giant map. However, the levels still felt a bit disconnected because each level was just a black box with a number in it. Well, when we move over to Super Mario World, the levels are just small little yellow or red dots on the ground with stuff around it showing what level it truly will be. It really makes each level stand out within this little world, and I think it really works quite well. There's 96 exits in the 70 or so levels in the game, which lead to several levels having multiple exits, like having keys to open secret exits, just different normal exits, which lead to secret levels, and more. There was so much exploration in this game compared to previous Mario games. You could even go back and play the previous levels and discover what each level had to offer that you may have not seen the first time you played it. It was truly an evolution of Mario more so than any other game. The game also had a boatload of new stuff for the game. New graphics, new enemies, and a way to make the game harder and easier. And this was truly revolutionary. In Super Mario World, throughout the game, there are different switches to activate different blocks, and throughout the levels you see different dotted line blocks.
These blocks were implemented to almost have an easy, medium, and hard mode. Shigeru Miyamoto wasn't exactly a fan of games that just had a difficulty setting for like easy, medium, and hard, so he wanted to almost implement that difficulty setting into the game itself, so to speak, which is exactly what he did. If you want to activate these switches, it makes the levels easier.
All of these things and more is what led to Super Mario World being built up to be the biggest game of all time. But what's the game actually like? Super Mario World opens with the Mario gang going on a trip to Dinosaur Island after the events of Super Mario Bros. 3. They picked Dinosaur Island because it seems like a magical place, cause I mean, I get it. However, when Mario and Luigi got to Dinosaur Island, they find out that Bowser is back, trapping Yoshis in magical eggs, and have kidnapped the princess once again. So of course, Mario and Luigi end up going on an adventure to save her. As they beat each castle, they save another Yoshi, and they get closer and closer to Bowser. And the Koopalings are back from Super Mario Bros. 3.
And what type of levels are actually in the game?
World 1 is Yoshi's Island. Yes, like the name of the other game. How cool. But Yoshi's Island is your basic old grassy plains, which to be honest, a lot of the game is very similar to this. The one way to tell what type of level you're in is actually the background of the level you're playing. which does make sense. Every single level takes place on Dinosaur Island, so there's a lot more restrictions when it comes to the way that they design levels. Every single level in this game has to fit into this one big map that they created, so they can't just chuck in a random desert level because there's no desert on Dinosaur Island.
Yoshi's Island is pretty much the introductory world. It shows pretty much each type of level type. A grass level, a sky level, a kinda water level, and a castle. It introduces all the small little things that you need to know throughout playing the game. It even has your first Switch Palace. And when you climb to the palace, you can see the wider world that this game takes place in, which I think is really cool.
World 2, otherwise known as Donut Plains, is kinda more of the same, with more grassy levels, but it also has a different selection of levels again. The background looks different now, with the sky being orange, and the levels are harder than before, but it's still the same theming. But this is saved due to the fact that this is the first world that has some secret exits. Actually, all of the other worlds now have secret exits, which let you either get further in the main game or get to Star Road, which we'll talk about later. World 2 also has the first proper underground level and the first ghost house, a new concept to this very game. Ghost houses are similar to castles, like we just played in World 1 and in the previous Mario games, but it doesn't have a boss at the end. Instead, the main point is to avoid the tens of boos that are trying to kill you the whole time. It's a lot of fun, but if I'm gonna be honest, I'm kinda sick of ghost houses.
Look, they're new in this game, but I think just after playing so many modern Mario games that just have ghost houses constantly and over again, I think I'm just sick of the concept in its entirety. But I do think at the time, adding ghost houses was a really good idea to mix up the Mario formula.
World 3, otherwise known as Vanilla Dome, is much more interesting than the concept they had for World 2. The entire world takes place underground, which is really unique, and I'm surprised they haven't really done that since. It shows how they took the restrictions that they created with making every single level take place on this one big map and ran with it by exploring every single little nook and cranny that this map had to offer. Every single thing about this game, they really put time and effort into thinking where these levels should take place. It shows the craftsmanship behind the game. It's really well done. World 4 is next, and it's the shortest world out of them all. But it makes sense, because the entire world is a bridge that goes from one side of the island to the other. World 5 comes afterwards with the Forest of Illusion, which has lots of different exits for each level, with you having to follow a very specific order to beat the world. Otherwise, you're just sent to walk in circles. It's a quite fun world, and each level takes this forest aesthetic and truly runs with it. Anyway, we move on to World 6, otherwise known as Chocolate Island. If you couldn't figure out by now, all of the different worlds in this game are named after flavors, and all of these themes were used in Super Mario Kart. This is that rocky theming that more modern Mario games have, and it's nice to see that it started here. And then finally, we have World 7. Yeah, this game only has 7 worlds, just like Super Mario Bros. 2.
The American Super Mario Bros. 2. Lost Levels has 13 worlds.
You enter the Valley of Bowser through a giant Bowser head, and that's really cool. The final level though is kinda easy, especially the final boss. I just find the boss to be a bit too easy in this game. But to be fair, when is the final boss in a Mario game ever that hard? I mean, the easiest one has got to be the final boss of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but this one's pretty easy too. But at the end, you beat Bowser and save the princess, and probably return back to Princess Peach's castle. Maybe this is why she bakes you a cake at the start of Super Mario 64. Maybe that's the lore. I don't know, I'm just making things up.
But that's not the end of what Super Mario World has to offer. There's also a special zone.
See, throughout the game, if you took certain exits, you had access to the Star Road. Once you beat all 5 levels in the Star Road, you gain access to the Special Zone. The Special Zone is the most interesting part. You can only get access to the Special Zone if you take a secret exit in Star World 5, but once you get there, you play the hardest levels in the entire game. And they're pretty hard. I haven't beaten any of these levels right now, so I decided to actually try and beat all 8 of these levels. Just watch. They're pretty hard. I'm trying to remember the controls. Okay. This seems pretty simple. Like, I'm not... Okay, well, I don't... Okay, we're getting somewhere, hey? And oh my god, I did it! Okay. Here we go. Tubular. What's gonna be so hard? Okay, so that was definitely just pointless. Okay. Well, I think I'm supposed to do this. So, okay. Okay, this isn't good. What do I do here? Uh-oh. Oh, freaking a biscuit. I would never use the rewind feature. Way cool. Here we go. That is not what I meant to do. Okay, I'm still alive. I'm still alive. I'm still alive. I'm still alive for now. Oh, yes! Awesome. What the frick is that thing? Okay. Bingo. There we go, that's 4 of them done. Let's go. This just feels like a World 1. This is a World 1 level. I know this. Oh, that actually kind of... Oh my... Wait, what? That's it? Oh my god, wait, no. I'm taking Yoshi with me. Hold on. Mondo. What does that mean? I'm sorry, Yoshi. Okay, never mind. We're back, Yoshi. Oh my god, I did it. Oh my god. This is the furthest I've ever gotten. Outrageous. Here we go. Fire Forest. Oh! Funky! Okay, I'm not reaching that. Although, you know I could. You are a super player. Ooh!
See? What did I say?
All of the levels in Super Mario World are just so unique. And unlike Super Mario Bros. 3, there isn't really any that stand out for being bad.
Look, I've always thought that Super Mario World was better than Super Mario Bros. 3. Purely because it always took me a lot more effort to get into Super Mario Bros. 3. Whereas Super Mario World, I could just start from the beginning and I'm locked in. But I do think there are some things that Super Mario Bros. 3 does better than Super Mario World. But that's probably why these two games are often compared to each other and often compete to be the best Mario game ever.
I think in Mario 3, the level themes are a lot more memorable than what we see in Super Mario World, but I think that the gameplay itself is better than Mario World. That sounds confusing, but I'll explain what I mean. Mario 3 has worlds themed around the desert, there being big things, pipes, and more. Each world is almost designed around a small little gimmick, whereas in Super Mario World, it's more themed around the island that it takes place on. Even Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2 have a lot more differences in level themes, with Super Mario Land having each world based on a different island, and Mario Land 2 having each world themed around the strangest possible things that you could ever think of, like a giant Mario or space. Mario World just feels as if it's lacking in that department, but it really makes up for it in its unique map functionality, which although was recreated in Super Mario Land 2, it was the first time they ever did something like this and it really worked. At the same time, Mario World feels like it's lacking in a lot of the basic things that each Mario game has, but again, it makes up for it with the amount of variety with the enemies in the game. Every bad thing in this game has something else that makes up for it, that makes the previous thing I just complained about not really that bad in the grand scheme of things. Super Mario World caused a cultural shift in gaming. The legacy that this game left on the rest of gaming is truly something that can't go unnoticed. Even if Super Mario Bros. 1 and 3 left more of a legacy behind it, Super Mario World left a legacy of it just being a damn good game. Without Super Mario World, I really don't think the Mario franchise would be in the place that it is today.
And without this game, we wouldn't have had the complete and utter shift in the development of Mario Land 2. Thank you, Super Mario World. Thank you for truly being one of the best games of all time. Who could that be? This better be good.
Is this a Return to Dinosaur Island helpline?
Yeah, it is. I thought I had this phone line shut down.
Watch out for Pandora, Charlie. 11 more days.
Well, that was weird.
Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins is the sequel to the classic Game Boy game, Super Mario Land, and is one of the most forgotten and underrated Mario games in the entire series. The original game Super Mario Land may have been a legendary Game Boy title, even if it's just an okay game, but Super Mario Land 2, oh boy, this one was different.
This one was good.
Super Mario Land 2 was heavily inspired by the latest 2D Mario game, Super Mario World, after being told to reinvent what Mario should be. Of course, they ended up being a bit closer to what Mario World was, but Super Mario Land 2 ended up being pretty much the size of a normal Mario game that you could play on the go. But how was this game developed, and what makes this game so damn good? Development for Super Mario Land 2 began after Super Mario World, with the director of the game being Hiroji Kiyotaki. Guys, I did probably pronounce that wrong, but you know, that guy. He previously directed games like Dr. Mario and Metroid 2. He was a legend when it came to developing games on the Game Boy. Gunpei Yokoi was a producer on this game after being responsible for the first Mario Land with his R&D 1 team, and not the main Mario team. Super Mario Land 2 started development in November 1991 and ended in September 1992. Making this game completely finished development in 10 months. One goal throughout the game's development was not to make this game like any other Mario game before it, to the point where you didn't have to save a princess at the end, and instead have to win something back that belongs to him, and introduce a brand new villain. A villain that would end up being so iconic that he stars in his own series by himself.
Who was this character, you may ask? Well, he was one of the most iconic characters of all time. It's Wario, of course.
Wario was probably the most important part of this game's development. Wario was created by the director of the game, who worked with Takehiko Hosokawa to create this character. The first thing they came up with for Wario was actually his name. It may be a common fact, but some of you may not know the origins of his name. It came from the Japanese word warui, which means bad, and mixed with Mario, it made the name Bad Mario. And so it just happened to work that when you took Mario, flipped the letter on his cap, it made it a W, so you could just go Mario, Wario. Easy.
Now that they had all the different pieces in place, they could finally develop Super Mario Land 2 6 golden coins.
The story of this game takes place right after the events of the first Super Mario Land. Mario returns from saving Princess Davy from the evil alien Tatanga in Sarasa Land and returns to his private island that he owned named Mario Land. When he returned, he noticed that an old rival from his childhood named Wario had taken over his castle with an evil spell that made everyone on the island be under his rule instead of Mario. He also spread out 6 golden coins, which were used as the keys to the castle, so now Mario has to go out and find these coins, completing 6 zones with 3 to 5 levels in order to get the coins back. Pretty simple story, to be honest.
And these 6 zones are not only different to each other, but are also different to all the other Mario games. And then there's a new power-up, the carrot. It's like if Kirby was Mario. Pretty much the same thing. Anyway, off to the zones.
Before you get into any of the zones, you play a tutorial known as Mushroom Zone, a level that pretty much shows you everything you need to know for the game. It's pretty simple, all things considered. It just shows you the types of enemies, which are mainly the same as normal Mario games, and the power-ups. But as we complete this level, we get access to every single zone in the game. You can literally choose any one of them. I decided to first start with the Turtle Zone, which is the underwater levels.
I thought I'd get out of the way what is most likely the worst levels, because I don't like water levels. I like snow levels, I don't like water levels.
Now, the levels in this world become more and more underwater as you go on, as it represents what's actually on the world map, just like Super Mario World. I assume this whole world map concept was entirely inspired by Super Mario World, because it's just the same concept but portably. The underwater levels here work the exact same way they work in any other Mario game. You can swim, avoid the Cheep and other fish, and go to the finish line. This may be a hot take, but I don't actually mind the underwater levels in this game. Normally, I'm one to hate water levels with a passion, and although that's still the case, I think these are honestly some of the best water levels in all of 2D Mario history. Now, that doesn't mean they're perfect. I wouldn't say that the second level is all that exciting, but I really like the concept behind this level, being like an airship from Mario 3, but being a sinking submarine or boat. I think that's genuinely a really cool concept that they did. The spiny enemies are a bit annoying to avoid, but other than that, it's fine. The final level of this world is really cool. You enter a whale's stomach and jump around his insides. This is such a creative level that has never been done since in Mario games, and I really enjoy the creative ways that they took the insides of a whale and made it into different level elements, like sticky areas, big spikes that are bones or something, and other cool things like that. The final level ends with a boss fight against a big octopus, and once again this was a really fun level and a really fun boss fight, but it's pretty simple. You just jump on the thing's head when it's out of the water 3 times and you're done. But hey, it's something different. After this we get the first golden coin and we move on to the next zone. The Mario Zone!
Yeah, they made an entire zone just out of Mario.
The first level in the Mario Zone shows the inner workings of Mario's bottom half, with you jumping on gears and other things hiding inside that massive Mario. Once again, this is another theme that hadn't appeared in a Mario game before, and really the closest thing that they've had since is Tick-Tock Clock in Super Mario 64. The level is really just a blast. If you enter the top bell at the end of any level, you get access to a little minigame where you can get either a power-up or a certain amount of lives. This is quite a fun little bonus reward, but after a while you kind of figure out how to get the lives every single time. The next level in the Mario Zone, you're in the middle of Mario, who I guess is a big gumball machine because you're jumping on a bunch of balls. This is another fun level, but it's kinda easy to cheese this one because you can just use the bunny power up and skip most if not all of the level. And it can also be hard to figure out what you can jump on and what's a part of the background, but hey, that's whatever. The end of the level has you jump onto a beach ball to get across some spikes before getting to the bell at the end of the level. Once again, it's another second level that's just okay. At the end of this level, we get another mini game. This one you try and unlock something by going for the right wire. Fun! The third level is a level that I honestly really couldn't tell you where it takes place. It's a good old castle level, or at least I think that's what they're replicating, and it's alright, but it's not really that great. The level tries to show that you're a toy, and I don't know, that's kinda it. Why would that be inside Mario? The final level takes place inside Mario's cap, and for some reason, it's made out of Lego. It's very similar to the previous level, but just Lego this time. Something tells me they kinda quickly ran out of ideas for the Mario Zone. This level ends with you fighting the 3 little pigs, which you jump on each 3 times. With every time you hit them, they get faster. They also all travel in different ways, but it's not that hard. Just do 9 jumps and you're done. Now that we've got the second golden coin, we can move on.
Already, this game is completely different to any other previous Mario game. And none of the levels are bad. Like, some aren't that interesting, but they're not bad levels.
Now we move over to the Pumpkin Zone, which is full of scary levels. The first level mainly takes place inside of a spooky castle with new enemies that have knives sticking out of them, and boos return from Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. I guess that this level is really just a different interpretation on what ghost houses are, and I think that's what this game really feels like. It's just a different interpretation on what Mario is. It's not like completely different like Super Mario Bros. 2, but it's not the same as anything we've played before, but it also is. The second level has us outside in the dark with a mixture of a lot of different elements that we've already played within the game. Once again, there's some different enemies, and you eventually end up in the water again. Yeah, this is another underwater level. Well, not really, only for like a second. This level kind of annoyed me. You would be shocked how long it took me to get past this one boo. It was really, really annoying. They placed it in such an annoying place that it makes it almost impossible to avoid. But thankfully, I eventually got past it and could finally move on to finish the level. I will say, this level is probably the best second level we've had thus far. The third level in the Pumpkin Zone is yet another castle level. This time though, it has Boo Goombas. That's pretty much the only difference. There's also a lot more pits to fall down in, I guess. It's not that interesting of a level, but once again, it's not a bad level, it just has nothing to it. The boss fight of the Pumpkin Zone has a witch or something. This is another boss fight where you jump on its head 3 times, but you also have to avoid being thrown into the sky, and then you get another golden coin. The next world is Macro Zone, and this is a similar theming to that one world from Super Mario Bros. 3, but instead you're shrunken down to the size of some ants. Well, for the first level anyway. The second level has you in front of a house, running through the grass in front of it, which you can tell via the background, and then I think you go under the house through some pipes. I mean, it's a bit stinky, but hey, you're not meant to think about it. It's a unique way to make me interested in an underwater level. You finish the level in the bathroom, and you continue to the next level.
The next level has you inside a house. I don't know what you expected.
It's pretty much a classic Super Mario level with the house theme. I think the house theme is a really cool idea for a Mario game, so it's really weird that they haven't come back to it. But hey, going through this level is really fun. The final level has you go through the fireplace and end up in the attic, and then you end up fighting a mouse. Once again, a pretty simple boss fight, but once again a very creative one. You get a golden coin and you move on. There's this one random level on the world map that's an auto-scroller that doesn't affect anything whatsoever. It just ends. There's not a lot going on here. There's another level about a hippo, and we'll talk about it later. We've got the tree zone to first talk about.
This zone is probably the most basic one. The second level is better, I guess. The final boss is a big bird named Big Bird. Not that big bird, another big bird.
Now let's get back to the hippo level. You need to complete this level a very specific way, by using a bubble in order to unlock the final zone. The Space Zone. Yeah, Super Mario Galaxy wasn't the first time Mario went to space. It all began in Super Mario Land 2. The first level has you on the moon, and you have larger jumps than you previously did. It's honestly quite a basic level, all things considered, but it's interesting seeing a 2D version of space in a Mario game before Super Mario Galaxy. The second level has you flying around in space avoiding angry stars, but watch out, the only angry stars that are actually angry at you are the ones with black outlines. The other ones do not matter at all, they're just a part of the background. And then at the end of this level, you fight Tatanga from the first game. How fun! He works exactly the same, but he's now easier.
Now I have 6 golden coins, and it's time to go back to my castle to fight for what's mine. But the castle is honestly not that exciting.
It actually feels very similar to Marble Zone from Sonic 1. It's pretty much the same thing, except first you need to fight some Wario balls. You jump on them twice and they die. Easy peasy. After the balls, you fight Wario. Wario is actually one of the easiest boss fights in this entire game. You jump on his head, and that's it. Then you fight Wario with the carrot power-up, with a render of Mario from Mario 3 in the background. Then you jump on that guy a few times, and then you fight Firepower Wario. You're never gonna guess how to beat him. You jump on his head a few times, then his hat falls off and he begins crying. He runs out of the castle, and then the castle turns back into Mario's castle. The end.
Now, Super Mario Land 2 6 golden coins came out and it was loved by the people. But only by the people that played it. Not many people played this game. The game kinda went under the radar. People were playing Super Mario World, people were playing the next main Mario game, Super Mario 64, but they didn't play Super Mario Land 2. Hell, Nintendo didn't even consider this game to be a part of the main Mario lineage for the longest time. This game was a really fun experience. But no one played it. People dismissed it as this generic old portable game that no one really cared about. The game was officially underrated. I honestly think Super Mario Land 2 should be played by more people because it is literally Super Mario World on the go, until they actually made Super Mario World on the go.
The Mario franchise consists of many different types of games, with platforming being the main section. But Mario isn't always the star of these platformers. Sometimes we get games like Donkey Kong Country or Princess Peach Showtime. But there's one sub-series of the Mario franchise that hasn't had a new game in it for years. A franchise almost forgotten to time, but it's with a character that everybody loves.
It's Wario Land. Well, it's technically Super Mario Land 3. We'll get to that distinction later. But Nintendo haven't made a Wario Land game in years. It's crazy. The last one was on the Wii. But today we're really just talking about the first game in the series. We're trying to see if the game lives up to the Super Mario Land 3 moniker that it gave itself. Is it a successor to Mario? Or is it something that's trying to be completely new? So hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and let's discuss Wario Land.
Wario Land is the sequel to Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins, and it makes it very obvious. Future games in the Wario Land series very much feel as if they're set in their own little universe, but this game kinda bridges the gap between the Mario Land universe and the Wario Land universe. Because of course, Wario's first appearance was in Super Mario Land 2, and was created to be Mario's rival, so he is a Mario character through and through. But this game is still different to what the average Mario Mario game has in it. Like, if you dig through everything this game has, it is still a Mario game. It has all the classic things that Mario games have, but it truly is its own game, and it has its own mechanics. Some of the things this game has done differently is having different treasures, different types of levels, and really just slows down Mario, but not in a bad way. Wario Land has managed to slow down the average Mario gameplay while also having stuff to do within the game itself. So now that we kinda know the history, let's just get into the game. The game begins with us learning about the story behind the game and how it kinda connects to the wider Mario franchise. As you might know, at the end of Super Mario Land 2's 6 golden coins, Mario defeats Wario and destroys Wario's castle. Wario is obviously upset by this and wants to restore his own castle. In order to do this, Wario sets out to capture a statue of Princess Peach from someone known as Captain Syrup. Wario wants to use the statue for ransom to buy and restore his castle. Pretty simple.
I heard the next thing that Wario wants to steal is the subscribe button. So if you want to stop him, you better press it yourself.
You may have noticed that all the footage you've seen so far is in full color, despite the fact that this game released on the original Game Boy, and that's because I'm playing a full color ROM hack for this game to make it just look better. If I didn't have this, I don't know what I'd do. This game just looks so much better with the color. Without it, the way this game originally was made, it just doesn't look right. But no matter the case, let's dive into the game to see what it has in store. I must say that before we really get into it, I haven't played that much of the Wario Land series before this, so I really don't know what I'm gonna get myself into. It's gonna get weird. The first level begins with Wario on a beach. Rice Beach, specifically, which is also the first world of the game. The first level is the one that's mostly similar to a Mario level, almost showing the transition between what a normal Mario level is and what a Wario level is. As the level goes on, we begin to learn the different powers he has, like an onion that can make you grow and get a cool little helmet, and you learn about the main way you can attack the enemies, by ramming into them. And you also learn how to open doors too, by giving a door 10 coins, if you want to save, and then if you want to get to the end, it just opens, or sometimes it's 10 coins, it depends. Despite the fact the game explicitly explains that to you, it took me way too long to figure that out when playing the second level of the game, but whatever, I eventually got past it. In the second level, we'll also learn about another power-up that we have, where we can shoot fire out of our head. It's quite cool. Further in World 1, we also move on to a castle-like level, similar to what appears in Mario games. Of course, it's not the same, not a lot of thwomps around, only a few, but it feels very similar to several castles of the castle levels that would eventually appear in games like the new Super Mario Bros. Series of all things, where each level kinda just has one gimmick, like in New Super Mario Bros. When you have to travel on a moving object or something like that, but it really works here. The final level in World 1 is another castle with a mix of some outside stuff. You know, the usual with a classic boss fight at the end of the level, and this boss fight just really looks like a large Koopa Trooper mixed in with a little bit of Bowser, really showing that Wario can take on more than anything Mario could ever do. The game over screen is quite fun to look at too. Next we move on to Mount Teapot, a brand new area based around, well, a teapot. Pretty simple. We begin with a semi-underwater level, full of new annoying enemies, more coins to collect, and bombs that explode. Speaking of coins though,
throughout the game you collect coins, you know, like Mario. And at the end of every level there's a bonus room that you can either collect more coins or more hearts in. They're always fun, but there's actually a really cool thing at the end of the game that will make you want to collect more and more coins. And it's not just giving you a new title screen like New Super Mario Bros. 2.
The minigames themselves to get coins and stuff are quite basic all things considered, but it's a fun thing that you can do at the end of every single level. Anyway, as we continue throughout the levels, we see more underwater sections, more caved areas, more enemies, and also keys that can let you open up a new door to find a collectible. It's crazy how much stuff there is to do within a single level, which is insane compared to other Mario games that released around the same time. Wario Land truly takes what Mario did and evolves it while the Mario franchise evolved in its own way with Super Mario 64 and beyond. Even though a lot of these things look insanely similar to each other, they're all different. They all have different things about them. different backgrounds, different elements found in levels, and I think that's what makes the Wario Land series unique compared to the rest of the Mario franchise, especially with the Mario games that were coming out at around this point in time. If we compare this to games like Super Mario Bros. 3, you can definitely think of the themes of specific worlds, and maybe you can remember some levels like 1-1 or something, but Wario Land just has some specific levels and specific gimmicks in each level that are a lot more memorable. This is a thing across all the Land games, not just Wario Land, but it's really cool here. Wario Land also works because of its power-ups. They aren't power-ups you'd find in a Mario game, these are uniquely Wario powers. Everything in this game is uniquely Wario. The only real connection between Wario Land and the Mario games is that coins exist and Wario exists. I haven't really played much of the later Wario Land games yet, but if they're anything like this, they really need to make one sooner rather than later. I mean, if we can get a grand return to 3D Donkey Kong with Donkey Kong Bonanza, there's no way we can't get another Wario Land.
Now, another fun thing about Wario Land is that not everyone has the same experience playing the game. This is more so explored in the future 3D Mario games like Super Mario 64, where you don't have to play every single level in a specific order. You can play Bob on Battlefield, and then you can play that secret slide level, and then you can go back to Bob on Battlefield, and then you could do like, I don't know, Womp's Fortress or something. Like, you can do whatever you want. Wario Land is kinda similar in that way, although not that advanced yet because it's on the Game Boy. But that leads to an interesting point that there's actually an entire world in Wario Land that I never even played. And it's probably the most interesting one.
Why don't you just try and unlock the world?
Shut up, Gramsci, you're not even meant to be here. You're supposed to be John.
John went out.
Oh. Anyway.
The world I didn't play was Sherbet Land. Yes, Sherbet Land. I'll talk about the legacy of Sherbet Land in a second, but I mainly want to talk about the context of it within Wario Land. Now, as I said, I didn't really play it, so I'll just try to recap some things. Of course, this world is completely set in an ice world, which means everything is going to be a bit slippery and everything is going to be snow themed. I famously do like snow levels, so I'd imagine I'd enjoy Sherbet Land quite a lot. Something else quite unique about Sherbet Land is it actually has an enemy that doesn't appear in any other level in the entire game, and it's also appeared in other Mario media, but never again in a game. This is, of course, the Buckethead. The Buckethead enemy only appears in Sherbet Land, and it's just this little snowman looking guy and sends projectiles toward you. How fun! Buckethead only appears in other forms of Mario media that aren't video games. Specifically, a lot of the Japanese manga, and we'll go deeper into that a bit later, but just so you know, he appears in a Japanese story and manga activity book called Mario no Bokenland. He also appears in the Super Mario manga named Super Mario Manga, that's the name, by Kodansha, and he also appears in Super Mario Kun, the long-running Mario manga that's still going to this day. The Buckethead is a forgotten Mario character, but I would like to see it return one day. It's just a fun-looking guy. The other interesting thing about Sherbet Land, of course, is that there are 2 Mario Kart tracks that are also called Sherbet Land. There's Sherbet Land in Mario Kart 64, which later reappears in Mario Kart Wii, a personal favourite of mine. I just have so many childhood memories with this one. And there's also Sherbet Land from Mario Kart Double Dash. This Sherbet Land from Mario Kart Double Dash is completely different to the original, and also reappears in Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, is Sherbet Land in Mario Kart at all related to the Sherbet Land in Wario Land? No, not at all. At least, I don't think so. I tried to look for connections between the two, but I have no idea if there are any connections, and what the connections would even be, besides from they're both called Sherbet Land and they have snow. But no matter, Sherbet Land is probably a lot of fun in Wario Land, but I'll continue to have no idea because I never played it. Oh well.
Now we can return back to something that I actually played. Stove Canyon! Stove Canyon being at this point in the game is actually quite interesting because it's a lava-themed world. Lava-themed worlds are normally the last world of Mario games, but Wario Land just wants to switch it up a little.
A lot of Stove Canyon is pretty much the same as what we previously played, but everything, at least in the ROM hack, is orange themed, and you have to avoid a lot of the ground in a lot of the levels with there being lava everywhere. but it still has that familiar Wario gameplay that you all know. There's also these pirate duck things as enemies. They're possibly one of the weirdest enemies in this game, but whatever. They throw boomerangs at you and you just have to avoid it. Most enemies in this game honestly just fall into one of three categories. They're either things that run toward you and hit you, throw things at you, or shoot things from the ground. Does that become repetitive? Eventually, but right now I'm still fine with it. But there is one other cool thing in this world, the minecart level. This isn't at the same level as Donkey Kong Country minecart levels, but it's still quite cool playing these slower paced minecart levels. It's so much fun, but you really need to make sure that you can land on the minecarts, because if you miss, you're dead. Now here's something interesting that I discovered while playing this game. The game actually still has a debug mode left in. If you press a certain button several times, you can actually just alter the amount of lives and coins and hearts that you have. It's really pointless, as most of the time you have enough lives anyway, and it was almost definitely not supposed to be left in the game, but it's nice that they left it in to make some numbers go up. The final boss fight of Stove Canyon is a massive face that licks rocks and shoots things at you.
What? A massive face? Oh, welcome back, John. Yeah, there's a massive face that loves to lick. I think that's the worst thing you've ever said in your entire life.
The final boss fight took me quite a while to beat, but once you figure out that you just need to pick up the little cookie things and throw it at his face after he spits it out, you're good. Sometimes the ground can also be licked to be destroyed. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore.
Next we move on to SST Cup.
The SST Cup is a mix of some jungle-like levels and some underwater levels. Like, yes, there's been a few of these levels already, and there will continue to be levels like this, and I think that becomes a problem in this game right here. Around the SST Cup is where you begin to notice that a lot of this game is kinda just the same thing over and over again. Some of these levels are so similar to other levels that we've already played. I don't know, I think the game just gets a bit boring and slow. I wish that the game would be a little bit more interesting, but it just isn't anymore. I've seen everything that the game can do. I imagine as I continue throughout all the Wario Land games, levels will become a lot more different from each other, but right now, all the levels are starting to become just the same damn thing. The final few levels are actually slightly more interesting because they actually take place on the pirate ship itself, the SST Cup. But other than that, I don't find this entire world to be all that interesting. Maybe you do, and that's fine, but I like a little variety in my platformers.
I like a little variety in my videos too.
The final boss of the SST Cup is a massive bird that shoots out smaller birds. You have to hit the big bird in order to deal damage to the boss, or you can just use the power-up that shoots fire out of your head. That's what I did, and it works very well. On to the next world. Parsley Woods is the next world, and it's more of the same. Except this time it's just the jungle, or the woods, I guess. This world has a lot of returning things from previous worlds like the minecarts, the underwater sections, and more, so I think it'll be as good a time as any to talk about Wario's history in the woods, as it's actually bigger than you probably think. Wario actually begun his adventure in the woods in the NES and SNES game Wario's Woods, a puzzle game where you play as Toad in order to beat Wario. The NES version of Wario's Woods was actually the very last first-party NES game in North America, and released in Japan alongside the AV Famicom with a re-release of The Legend of Zelda. Wario's Woods isn't all that exciting, all things considered. It's quite a basic puzzle game, but it's interesting seeing Wario's early years in the woods. Nintendo has re-released the NES version of the game like maybe 100 times, but one version of the game that they never actually re-released is the far more interesting SNES version of the game, which actually has several other versions of it too. See, in Japan, the SNES, known as Super Famicom, had an add-on known as the Satellaview, which allowed games to be beamed to your Super Famicom through satellite and be available to play for a limited time. Wario's Woods was one of these games, but it wasn't the original game, it was slightly altered versions of the game. There were 3 versions of the game. The first one being Wario's Woods Burst of Laughter version, otherwise known as Wario no Mori Bakusho version, which added several Japanese celebrities to the game. game, similar to what Nintendo did with All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros., which was a collaboration with Fuji Television, a partnership between Nintendo and Fuji Television that will never ever end. After that, there was Wario's Woods Again, which was more similar to the English version of the game, and was actually broadcast between 1995 and 2000. I didn't even know the Satellaview was still active in 2000. It ended in 2000, but if it ended in 2000, that means it was active in 2000, so I didn't know that. Then there was Wario's Woods Event version, which was more based on the Burst of Laughter version, with there being two versions of the event version in 1995. So clearly, Wario has had a large history in the woods, so it's no surprise that Wario would like to stay in the woods. Parsley Woods, though, is also clearly inspired by the Forest of Illusion from Super Mario World, as a lot of its graphics do look quite similar. However, this world is also mainly known for its train levels. Yes, somehow there's actually 3 separate train levels, one with just the tracks, and the other 2 being trains that are moving, and it's like an auto-scroller. These levels are quite unique, although very similar to airship levels from Super Mario Bros. 3, and I just wish the whole world was themed around them. I think these levels were some of the most memorable levels in all of Wario Land thus far, in amongst some of the most boring levels that the game has thrown at us. The boss fight of this world is a character known as Ghost, unrelated to the Boos and the character from Thunderbolts, of course. Ghost actually appears in some other pieces of Mario media outside of Wario Land, but not in any games. No, he is another one that appeared in the Mario mangas. One manga that he appears in that I actually couldn't find that much information about was the manga just known as Super Mario. Super Mario was by Kodansha, with each volume tying into the latest Mario game. It began with Super Mario Bros. 3 and went all the way to Yoshi's Story, which they labeled as Super Mario 64 Yoshi's Story for some reason. Don't question it. Mario Kart 64 is known as Super Mario 64 5 Mario Kart 64 because it's the 5th part of the Super Mario 64 storyline. Ghost actually appears at some point during the Wario Land storyline, either in Wario Land 1, 2, or 3. It's not exactly clear, but he appears at some point during that arc. Within that arc, by the way, there was also the Mario and Wario, Wario's Woods, and Donkey Kong storylines. The other manga that Ghost appears in is Super Mario Kun, specifically Volume 12, which is the 3rd part of the Wario Land arc and the 2nd part of the Wario's Woods arc. Super Mario Kun is actually still running and it's up to Volume 61, but it's only released in Japan and a few other non-English speaking countries. The story follows Mario, Yoshi, and Wario going through the events of Wario Land, fighting Ghost in Stage 6. Also, a Mecha Donkey Kong shows up. Don't ask, it doesn't make sense to me either.
Finally, after all that manga talk, we can get back to the actual game at hand. And we're actually already at the final world, Syrup Castle.
Our main goal here is to steal the giant golden Princess Peach statue back. There's 4 levels in this world, with the first level basically just being another Parsley Woods level, followed by the second level being entirely in the castle, and then the third level being outside of the castle after the walls began to be destroyed, and then we finally make it to the final level.
I hate this level with a burning passion. I hate this level so much, I think I literally spent 2 hours trying to beat it. That final boss is one of the most annoying things I think I've ever played. I hate it so much.
The final boss fight is against a giant genie, because why would Wario fight a woman, being Captain Syrup? That's just sexist. So we fight the genie instead. And this boss fight needs so much precision, it's ridiculous. Now, I've played hard games in the past, so I don't know what it is about this genie, but it's so specific about what you need to do to beat it that I just don't want to do it. But once you eventually do, you're actually greeted to a castle. A castle you paid for with all the money you collected throughout the game. Depending on how much money you collected depends on what castle you get. And after all that, you find out that Mario stole the Princess Peach statue back. So much for him and Yoshi helping us against Ghost and fighting Mecha Donkey Kong, I guess. Okay, if you're actually curious about what happens in the manga version, I'll quickly go through what happens after the Donkey Kong fight leading up to the Captain Syrup Genie fight. Mario plays a slot machine and gets a 3-up, which allows there to be 3 other Marios there to help him fight the Mecha Donkey Kong. But after defeating it, he finds out that Wario was controlling it, but only because he was forced to by Ghost. Wario steals a crystal ball that Mario has, and Ghost destroys the Donkey Kong robot. Mario and Yoshi finally meet up with Wario and get annoyed with him, but are stopped by a pouncer on the train. Mario destroys the pouncer, getting the second crystal ball, and Wario realizes that he's safer with Mario by his side. Wario joins the group back and the 3 of them search for the third crystal ball. While going through somewhere, they actually meet up with Luigi, who is only out there because of the request from the fans.
Just like this, Luigi.
Luigi brings a bunch of power-ups to Mario, such as the cape, the raccoon suit, the frog suit, and the bunny power-up, and they fight a ghost once again. They get the final crystal ball and make their way to Syrup Castle. The genie appears once they get there, and Mario, Wario, and Luigi, who has a dragon power-up for some reason, fight the genie while Yoshi has a bucket on his head like in Mario and Wario. They begin to fight the genie and overwhelm him, but then the gang gets trapped under the genie, so the genie farts on him, with the gas being so strong because he held it in for centuries, and Mario gets trapped inside the lamp. They eventually meet up with a masked gorilla who is revealed to be the new Donkey Kong that will later appear in Donkey Kong Country. I think that's as much information as you need about the Wario Land part of the manga.
Super Mario Land 3 Wario Land may be considered the third Super Mario Land game, but it truly is the first Wario Land game, and changed a generation of gamers forever. It went on to inspire indie games like Anton Blast and Pizza Tower, specifically games further in the series. Without Wario Land, the future of video games as we know it may have been completely different. But at least we wouldn't have the image of a genie farting on the Mario gang. That is an image that is going to stay in my head forever. Thank you, Wario Land!